Well, I would say unlike how yesterday's show started off, that one was worth staying up for last night. The Indiana Pacers get it done in the wee hours as the clock struck midnight on a day that certainly a lot of people have had circled on their calendar. NFL trade deadline is here Tuesday, November 5th. College basketball season is underway. Purdue and Butler survive-ish. You want to describe it like that?
Welcome back to Earth, Purdue basketball.
And again, the Indiana Pacers get really, I thought, a pretty impressive win last night in Dallas. Rick Carlisle going to join us 9 o'clock today. We'll push Rick back 1 hour. Obviously, the time change down there, and a late one for the Pacers. Good Tuesday morning to you. The lines were long in the polling areas near my home. You guys?
I have not been by them. I have absolutely no idea. I'm not an animal. I'm not going by them before 7 a.m. Come on, what are we doing?
Well, I mean, I
daylights.
just naturally drive by them on my commute in.
Right, I figured so.
It was long, to say the least.
Yeah.
Was it really?
Our polling place by us, the parking lot was packed.
So safe travels to everyone out there, of course, and thank you to everybody that is helping out with the voting process.
I mean, this is no offense. Am I wrong? I mean, I understand, if you have a job or kids or whatever, I'm not, get out there and vote for sure. But you're out there at, 5, 6 in the morning. Doesn't your employer have to let you leave for a couple hours in the middle of the day? Kevin Bowen and Mark Dayton, isn't that the move? You leave in the middle of the day so you can get away from work for a couple hours? Am I wrong? Or has early voting changed all of that? I really don't know. I guess I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't know. We work such a joke of a job that...
Well, that's always been my thing. I've been in sports talk radio.
I was going to say, I don't think anything applies to like our 9-to-5 lifestyle here, but nonetheless, maybe people are, particularly busy on this Tuesday morning. Again, it's NFL trade deadline day.
Well, not only that, you're the college football playoff rankings tonight, right? You have Kirk Cignetti, who's going to be the star of the show on ESPN, I would imagine.
So is that 7 o'clock tonight?
Yeah, it's 7, 8 o'clock tonight, yeah. Yeah, I know. Already Cignetti has pulled the Nick Saban, calling them poison if his team starts to pay attention to the college football rankings. I like that. The guy who's been cocky all offseason and all year on the eve of those being released says, you can't pay attention to stuff like that. It's poison. Okay.
Indiana, 2-touchdown favorites over Michigan. As shocking as that sounds, you had to love Kurt Cignetti yesterday. He just subtly threw in there. And I feel like he does this like once a press conference, and I don't think he's trying to be intentional.
Okay.
But there's no way he says it without it coming as like a direct shot at Tom Allen in Indiana last year. At one point yesterday in his press conference, he goes, yeah, it wasn't much of a game last season against Michigan.
No, it really wasn't, was it?
52-7. Do you think any team has ever lost 52-7 to a team the year prior, and the next year they're a 2-touchdown favorite over that team?
I don't know. We'll have to ask Scotty or someone to come up with that to see if they can find that. I don't know. So I'm excited for night, obviously, many different reasons. You mentioned the deadline, the NFL trade deadline. Good thing the Kansas City Chiefs got their trade done a little bit early. DeAndre Hopkins was fantastic last night. But like you mentioned, KB, and I know maybe you want to puff your chest out a little bit for your boy Benedict Mathurin down the stretch, but the Pacers needed that win. They were in familiar territory again in a close game in the fourth quarter, time winding down, and this time they won. Miles Turner was fantastic last night. I thought Haliburton had his moments as well. If nothing else, it's going to be a much happier Rick Carlisle today. I know they're 3-4. I know he won't be too happy, but that's sure as hell a lot better than 2-5. And the narrative would continue to grow that when games get close in the fourth quarter, this team doesn't win. And last night they did.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I, could sit here and say Mathurin was outstanding in the fourth quarter, which he was. Honestly, I'll go to John's guy. I thought Miles Turner was
so good.
The best player for the Pacers last night. And, this is a game that Miles certainly circles on the calendar, getting back to Dallas. And it feels like he routinely has played pretty well against them, particularly down there. We said this last week as I thought the injuries started to pile up, and I guess we didn't have a show directly after the Isaiah Jackson injury. But, I mean, right now, again, Turner, to me, is probably the most indispensable player, not named Tyrese Haliburton. And you could, make an argument he's even, 1A, 1B with Haliburton, considering your lack of depth at center. 30-11 for Turner last night. So needed. They didn't play any other center, I guess if we want to call Obi Toppin and Pascal Siakam that. So Turner, really good. And again, Haliburton got into the paint. I thought that was critical for him snapping out of this, early funk, if you will. And then the trickle-down effect. Mathurin, again, great in the fourth quarter. Siakam continues just to be steady and reliable and shouldn't be taken for granted. McConnell and topping off the bench. And weirdly, here are the Pacers at 3-4 to start the year, and they've beaten the two NBA finalists with those two teams healthy when they've played them. I mean, last night it was Luka, Kyrie, Klay Thompson. The Boston game, you had that normal starting five in the lineup there. So very important for the Pacers to get that done last night. Another fourth quarter lead that this time they were able to hold on to. And now they return home to face the Paolo Banchero-less Orlando Magic tomorrow night.
Yeah, we never talked about that injury that's going to keep him out a while. I mean, that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal for the Orlando Magic.
Yeah, I think the Pacers played them twice in this stretch. Obviously, Banchero went off for 50 against them last
don't
week.
You expect those to be wins now? Like, no excuse. And I know they have their injury issues, do the Pacers.
Yeah, you would hope. So the Pacers get it done last night in Dallas. Again, Rick Carlisle, 9 o'clock this morning. I guess it needed confirmation yesterday just based off how I would think at times the words from Shane Steichen maybe aren't as direct as many would like. Joe Flacco will indeed be the starting quarterback this Sunday against the Buffalo Bills. Any surprise to you there?
Well, no. I mean, so I'm listening to Steichen yesterday, and again, he does the exact same thing where he gives a for now with Joe Flacco. Why is he doing that? KB, I'm asking, why is he doing that? I don't understand why he's doing that. Does he not want Joe Flacco to be the quarterback? I mean, does Shane Steichen not want him to be the quarterback? Did someone tell him to make Joe Flacco the quarterback? I mean, why is he saying? I mean, that'd be like if I came on here and I was like, yeah, I enjoy doing sports radio in Indianapolis for now. I really enjoy working with you, Kevin Bowen, and you, Mark Dayton, for now. Like, you guys would take that as you don't want to work with us. You would take that as you're going to leave Indianapolis Sports Talk Radio. So is he hedging his bet here? Is Shane Steichen telling us? I mean, he's done this like 5 times now. I don't understand. He's not committed to Joe Flacco. If you're doing a qualifier with your starting quarterback, you're not really dialed in. I guess part of us should be happy. We rarely get any sort of truth or look inside to what Shane Steichen might be thinking. Am I overreacting here? It's one of the first things I heard when I'm listening to Steichen. I think he even said it on Colts Roundtable last night. It's like, yeah, for now, Flacco's our quarterback. And then if you ask, wow, what about Anthony Richardson? No, Flacco's our guy. It's like, I don't understand what they're doing. I understand they bench Anthony Richardson. I understand that Flacco in that offense stunk it up in Minnesota. And I don't understand why he's doing it, why we're using a qualifier. It makes me think at some point here, they're going to go back to Anthony Richardson. It makes me think that, Joe Flacco has a relatively short leash as a starting quarterback. Am I wrong? Why is he using that terminology?
Yeah, is it a crutch? Is it just, does he want to leave himself an out that down the road? I don't, trying to parse Shane Steichen words, I think has already stressed me out enough that I don't know if I have a great answer for you on that end. Joe Wrights going to join us here coming up at 7:30. We'll talk more about not only that, but just in general, how do you get the run game going? I think that, to me, is a big question moving forward, especially if Flacco is going to be the guy here. I think it's a bit head-scratching, just like quarterback play in general. Why was Anthony Richardson as a rookie, Gardner Minshew last year, why were they better than this year's version?
Right. And you ask about
those
that.
quarterbacks?
It's a good question.
I just think that is a bit confusing to me as well. I mean, do we see anything trade deadline-wise today? Again, 4 o'clock is the deadline for that. Is there anything? Do you look at the free agent class here in 2025, and do any of those names make sense to you there? Again, trades are super rare for the Colts in season. Now, the NFL, we've seen a decent amount of them. You brought up a guy last night that certainly had a huge impact on that game in DeAndre Hopkins. Do the Colts fall anywhere into that boat? So that'll be something to keep an eye on. I've used the phrase quite often, don't be bad, boring, and old at quarterback. The Colts certainly wore that on Sunday night, and NBC said, enough is enough. We don't want to see you again.
Yeah.
The Colts flexed out of their other Sunday night game. It takes a lot for the opponent against a New York team to be flexed out of Sunday Night Football.
Especially the Jets, especially Aaron Rodgers.
I think that sent a clear message to how the NFL and how the national audience views the Colts there. So we kind of knew this was coming. I think we mentioned it at the end of the show. That week slate is very good coming up here Not this coming week, but the week after that. So it'll be Chargers-Bengals into Sunday Night Football. Colts-Jets fall back to the 1 o'clock window.
Yeah, even though don't you feel like that's 80-90% Colts probably with what happened with Minnesota? It's also, and I think, Mark, you're right on this, people are fatigued of the Jets. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's like the Jets aren't interesting right now. The Jets aren't winning, so they're not interesting, and they're not. And even if they lose, they're not having the blow-ups. They already fired their coach, and for the most part, 2-3 weeks ago, people left them for dead. So
they're bad and boring.
Yeah, I mean,
old.
I kind of think that it is more about the Colts, unfortunately, but there's also tentacles, if you will, of the Jets as being a complete disaster, and not like an interesting disaster this year. I know we got to take a break. Let me ask you. I mean, I don't think the Colts will do anything trade deadline. In fact, I would be stunned if they did. I hope they do. That would be fantastic if they said, no, there's some pieces. We still think, it's one bad game in Minnesota. We're going to rally the troops and try to find a guy or two. That would also be admitting that this isn't a playoff-ready team. And I think just a part of it is Chris Ballard's not going to admit that. That'd be admitting that he doesn't have enough pieces.
So you want them to buy versus sell?
Sure. Well, I mean, if they think that Minnesota, which is what Steichen said yesterday with Flacco, was one bad game. I mean, they were a playoff team going into Minnesota. They're an 8 seed right now, so it's not like they're out of it. They're not one of these, there's 7 or 8 2-win teams in the NFL, KB. They're not one of those teams. Why not? I guess you mentioned selling. I hadn't thought about that. I'm not sure what would be out there for them to sell, quite frankly. Do you have a name for me? Is there somebody out there?
I think, again, we can do this. I think you take a look at that 2025 free agent class, and, are there guys that you view we are not going to re-sign these particular players, therefore, what's the need to have them on your football team for the rest of the season? That, to me, is...
Boy, that'd be a strong statement if they got rid of somebody like that, right?
That to me, is pretty basic roster-building logic, and I know Chris Ballard would disagree with that comment, but... don't you want to get some return on your own investments? I mean, the Pacers have been in that boat at times before of guys that they don't want to just walk out the door without getting anything
last year
in return for them. So I think, that is important to try and seek out. Now, again, NFL trades, I think there's a misnomer a lot on exactly what you can get for these guys. Probably one of the more popular names that people bring up is a 1-year contract, and theoretically you have the future at that position behind him. Ryan Kelly to Tanner Bortolini.
I know.
Right now. Now, again, I think there's a misnomer of what would you get for a 31-year-old Ryan Kelly?
You wouldn't get anything.
So, those are all things that we can get into.
It's like an old car, KB. Sometimes it's worth more to you than it is if you trade it in.
But again, people might push back on that. What is Ryan Kelly versus Tanner Bortolini worth to the Colts right now?
Yeah.
I mean, is that a debate that, you could have a little bit there? So, plenty to get to on that front. Again, Colts flexed out of Sunday Night Football. That is the Jets a week from Sunday, so it'll be the Bills here 1 o'clock, and they will get back into the 1 o'clock window the rest of November. Pacers win in Dallas last night. Miles Turner, outstanding. Rick Carlisle going to join us coming up at 9 o'clock. And Purdue with, I would say, certainly a bit of an up and down 40 minutes of their opener against Texas A&M Corpus Christi. They pull away late. It's a 17-point win. It was certainly just a couple of possessions, though, with 3-4 minutes to go in that one. Butler struggled big time with Missouri State last night. Thad Matta not pleased at all post-game for that one. Butler does pull away there. Missouri State coached by Conzo Martin, who we had on.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
During Purdue's run
How
to
could
the
I
national
forget about
championship
that?
game.
Yeah.
Did you see the night?
Good for him.
For Zach Edey last night?
I did not see the night for Zach Edey. How did he do?
Zach Edey with 25 points, 12 rebounds, 11 of 12 from the field, knocked in a 3.
Oh, did he?
4 blocks.
Good for him.
So Zach Edey with a career night. He's now been in double figures each of the last 4 games.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about Butler. As for Purdue, it's not like I'm worried, but this is a different Purdue team. We're not talking about them being the overall number 1 seed and kind of just easily winning the Big Ten by a couple games. They're kind of down there with the rest of us, and that doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but it means, you can't throw it into Edey a couple different times and get some fouls or get some easy buckets, or the defense collapse and you get wide open shots. So it's going to take some time. I still think, listen, I picked Purdue to be about a 4 seed. I think that's exactly about what they're going to be. Turn the ball over too much, quite frankly, last night. So we'll dive more into that. Again, coming up at 9 o'clock, Rick Carlisle will join us. Cannot wait for that conversation. On the other end, your morning check down. What did Shane Steichen say about his offense and quarterback position? We'll get you a couple thoughts on the Pacers and your news and scores from overnight. Appreciate you waking up with us. It's a Tuesday right here, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Three big guests on this Tuesday morning. The great Joe Wrights in about 5 minutes talking Colts. Rick Carlisle bumped to 9 a.m. today. It was a late one last night in Dallas. Rick Carlisle, 9 a.m. And Stephanie White, certainly a legend in this state. The new head coach of the Indiana Fever joins us at 9:30. Andy Sweeney, go ahead to the check down.
Yeah, before we get to obviously a busy night of college basketball, Monday Night Football, and then obviously all the Pacers stuff, let's start with Shane Steichen. He met with the media yesterday because of Sunday Night Football. Met later in the afternoon. Was asked straight up, is Joe Flacco continuing to be your starting quarterback?
Yeah, we'll stay path with Joe going forward right now.
And there's the right now that we talked about in segment number one. Right now. I just don't know why he's saying it. Okay, Joel A. Erickson asked this. I thought this was interesting as well. Let me give you this one. Steichen was asked about the national reports late in the week and the weekend last weekend about Anthony Richardson maybe not preparing enough. That's why he was benched. Here's what Steichen had to say.
Yeah, I addressed that last week. I don't know where there's reports out there all the time. So, yeah, I addressed that last week. There's no issues there.
So no issues. I don't know if that clears it up, but again, it's the words at least of Shane Steichen. As for the team, it's Colts and Bills coming up on Sunday. In KB, we talked yesterday, that spread opened at 5 and is now down to 4. Buffalo favored by 4.
And again, the Colts flexed out of Sunday Night Football coming up next Sunday night. All right, last night in Dallas, if you stayed up for it, you got rewarded. The Pacers had another fourth quarter lead. Certainly some moments where you're like, oh boy, but they were able to finish it off, beating the defending Western Conference champs 134-127. The hometown kid, the Dallas native, Miles Turner, outstanding. 30 and 11 from him. I thought Tyrese Haliburton lived in the lane a lot more than he has. I don't know if that's 2.5 days off. You know, it was probably one of the longer rest periods the Pacers have had with this early season schedule. 25 points and 12 assists for him. Siakam, great. Benedict Mathurin, some big-time moments in the fourth quarter. Him guarding Luka Doncic made me a bit uneasy early on. I actually thought he did a halfway decent job.
Why? He's looking at himself in the mirror a little bit, doesn't he know?
Luka,
Come on.
In true Mathurin fashion, he made sure to jab step Luka, I think, 3 times late and hit a 3 in his face to put that game on ice. So really nice win for the Pacers. And again, Rick Carlisle coming up 9 o'clock. It's the Magic on Wednesday, at the Hornets Friday, and the Knicks here 5 o'clock on Sunday. So again, Sunday you're going to get the the Colts Bills 1 o'clock, and then Pacers Knicks 5 o'clock. Both of those in Indy.
That's a nice doubleheader. I will say we need to talk about this later. You know, Benedict Mathurin, whether he gives up that starting job when Nesmith comes back. That's going to be an interesting topic. I thought he had some big-time moments down the stretch last night. College basketball underway. Good God, I watch a lot of college basketball last night. Purdue 90-73 over Texas A&M Corpus Christi. The Islanders, Kevin Bowen, that's who they were. Trey Kaufman-Renn, 15-9 in the win. Fletcher Lawyer, 21. Braden Smith, 2 rebounds away from a triple-double. Butler, 72-65. Any big takeaways on either one of these games?
When I went to Butler practice a few weeks ago, I thought, who is going to be their point guard? They're huge. They're big. I like the wings a lot. Who's going to be their point guard? 19 turnovers, 12 assists. That is not good. Thad Matta was not happy post-game at all. So
was he not happy with himself for not having a point guard or the team?
Well, yes. I mean, you could
kind of kidding, but come on.
Roster construction there. I mean, could Finley Bizjack be a point guard?
No.
I mean, again, that's a little out of position for me, but we'll see about that moving forward. Then for Purdue, certainly Miles Colvin was huge off the bench. I'd like to see more of C.J. Cox. I think that freshman's got some juice that I would like to see. But 2 big questions for me with Purdue all year long. What happens when teams get the ball out of Braden Smith's hands, which is much easier said than done. Let me be clear. Braden Smith is exceptional. And then Trey Kaufman-Renn, can you be 14-8 in the Big Ten? Can you be that? Because if he can be that, I think Purdue can have a consistent low post option. Because again, at times, certainly last night when he wasn't providing that, it was either Braden creating or you're kind of struggling to find an answer there. So I thought Kaufman-Renn had some moments, but again, doing it against the Islanders versus doing it against, insert your Big Ten team here will be a different story. Indiana in action tomorrow night, SIU Edwardsville. Only other stuff I had on my end, Monday Night Football last night, Chiefs absolutely inevitable. There was a moment where it looked like Patrick Mahomes' season was over with a non-contact injury. It was a turn of an ankle on a wet field. Mahomes back in the lineup. In the Bucks, boy, I know Todd Bowles is an old school coach. I know he's a defensive guy. Go for 2. They score late. They're down 1. I thought the extra point was going to be iffy based off the wet field. He kicks the extra point. Lo and behold, Taylor Swift's in the building. There's no chance you're winning that coin toss. They don't win it. Mahomes and the Chiefs go right down. Kareem Hunt game-winning touchdown.
That's me and Mark were talking about this during the break. The math is different with the Chiefs. Yeah. With any other team in any other team in the NFL. Well, okay, if you kick the extra point there and go to overtime, I get it, but not the Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, plus people always say underdog on the road. Yeah. You tend to favor that. And again, I always laugh at people with the charts. The chart is different when you're facing Mahomes.
Yeah, it's just different. I don't know what to tell you guys. It's not the same.
Well, I just didn't get, you got all the way to the 1, then they called a timeout for some reason with 30 seconds left.
And credit to Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. I mean, that was a hell of an effort without Evans, without Godwin. That wasn't reward them.
Well, and then you saw, if you would have gone for 2 and gotten it, the Chiefs then have to go down the length of the field and score. And you saw how they were trying to do that anyway just to get a game-winning field goal, and Mahomes was kind of erratic. So if you had the pressure of them having to actually convert and score, I just don't get why they didn't go for 2. It made no sense to me.
Well, DeAndre Hopkins, outstanding.
He was good.
The Chiefs, 9-0.
Yeah, and I was they're going to go undefeated. I'm not ready for that. I still don't think they will, but you could convince me. I did love Carson Wentz. Did get to come off the bench, your boy Carson Wentz. Andy Reid, I was going to put him in. I was going to tell Patrick to sit down. Oh, yeah, okay, big boy.
I mean, it did
Come on, Andy Reid.
For about
move aside.
For about 2 minutes, we had a very much oh, my gosh.
We have seen this, though. That's what I'm saying.
And I don't know if it was the Pacers and Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman jarring me right now, but it looked a bit like that. But Mahomes claimed that he turned his ankle a couple weeks ago, and that's what this was.
Yeah, 30-24, your final there. So week 10 of the NFL season around the block. Joe Wrights going to join us on the other side. Boy, there's tons to talk about with him. Overreaction, just one game in Minnesota, or a bigger worry with Joe Flacco. Offensive line stuff as well. We'll get you ready for Sunday against the Bills. Appreciate you waking up with us on this Tuesday. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Certainly noticed some extra car traffic here on this election Tuesday, particularly around your polling site. So safe travels to everyone out there, and thank you to everyone helping out from an election standpoint. Rick Carlisle, 9 o'clock here on this Tuesday morning. They spent the night in Dallas after the late one last night, so we'll talk about that Pacers victory with the head coach at 9. Stephanie White at 9:30, and when we speak of great coaching efforts, our next guest joins us here. He's certainly known as a man you hear on these airwaves on Monday nights. You hear him Colts pregame. He's the one, the only Joe Wrights. He also is the head coach of a team that I got wind of, not only undefeated, the fifth graders at Our Lady of Mount Carmel.
There you go.
They didn't allow a point all season. Joe Wrights, have they erected the statue of you on Oak Ridge Court up there?
They're erecting the statue of the 19 boys on the team, Kevin, because I tell you what, awesome group. We had a ton of fun, just a great group of boys to coach. But you're right, we did not allow a point all season, and we used
That's
to
unbelievable.
joke. I told the defensive coordinator, you set a high standard, my friend, so it's only downhill from you for the future. But no, it was a great season, and yeah, what a day! It's election day. It's 70 degrees in Indiana in early November. It is my wife Jill's birthday today.
Happy birthday, Jill Wrights!
Great,
the real hero of your family.
Yes, there we go.
As you know, KB, she's the real athlete of the family. MAC champion, 1,500-meter runner at Western Michigan. But and we get to talk some Colts football. So here we go.
Out that we might need your defensive coordinator to get coffee with Gus Bradley at some point here. That sounds like a little meeting we should set up here. Happy birthday to the great Jill Wrights, mother of 8, an absolute hero on that end. Joe, let's begin with just the elephant in the room of the Colts right now, and that is the quarterback situation. Maybe go back to last week. Your thoughts when the move was made, and I guess maybe put yourself inside of that locker room and seeing, okay, we're going back to the Band-Aid term in Joe Flacco versus opting for the future with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, and I think if I was in that locker room, I would have supported the decision, and without knowing any of the internal conversations after how the Houston game went down and Richardson pulling himself out of the game, which, I did think was a big deal, just as a former player. But I understand as the player, you want to win games, and you're thinking, hey, we got a team that's good enough to get to the playoffs. We're not getting it done offensively. Obviously, third down and, completion percentage was just really the Achilles heel, with Richardson through his first, 6 games that he played this year. So I like the move. And I also don't think that this means – I just don't think people – and I understand you want to read into the tea leaves. What does this mean for next year and the year after and Richardson's future? To me, Kevin, and I know you know this as well, sports and football especially, things play themselves out. Let things play themselves out over the next game, 2 games, 3 games. I know that, Shane has said, Joe Flacco's our quarterback for now. The next 3 games, if the Colts go 3-0, that's a lot different than they go 0-3. You know what I'm saying? In terms of what's going to happen towards the end of the year. I do think that Richardson's going to play again at some point this season, either because of just performance, switch it up, potential injury, 2 quarterbacks, get him on the field in different packages. And I think that Richardson, still can be your guy moving forward. I don't think it's a bad thing that he gets a chance to watch from the sideline, not because of an injury like he had last year, but because of performance and because of maybe some, leadership things. And I do think that the big difference in last year to this year, and I've been telling everybody this, when he went down and got hurt early on last year, yes, he missed the game time and experience, but what did he really miss? Practice. When you're a young player, you got to practice Wednesday and Thursday and Friday because you're building your habits in individual periods, all your footwork, all your accuracy, routes on air with the quarterback, seeing defenses, timing with receivers, situational football. And I do think that he missed a lot of that last year. I know this is his second year. It's really kind of a pseudo-rookie year because not only the game time, but the 14 weeks of practice time that even if you were not playing last year, you would have got, if that makes sense.
Joe Wrights with us here on the Fan on the Payless Liquors hotline on this Tuesday. Joe, how much should no Anthony Richardson affect the running game? The numbers are different, especially with Jonathan Taylor, nearly 2 yards per carry. And how can Shane Steichen make it better this coming week, do you think?
Yeah, great question. And I think, one, when Richardson's on the field with AR, it's just such a threat defensive coordinators have to allow from. You go back a couple weeks ago to the Titans game, and Goodson scores on a 7-yard run. He barely gets touched. Well, the reason is because it's an inside zone read where Richardson can pull it and run around the end, and there's 2 or 3 guys that are committed to playing him, so your box is lighter. What that means is there's not as many guys in the middle of the field, linebackers and safeties, that are attacking Jonathan Taylor because they're worried about Richardson. So what I think run game-wise, we need to get more diversity in the running game with Jonathan Taylor. You know, maybe you run some toss-crack plays where you're taking a wide receiver, a tight end, you're blocking down, you're pulling those big linemen out in space, getting Taylor the ball and getting him some room to run. You know, I did think we had some good diversity. We ran some counter plays where we're pulling linemen, some inside zone runs. But the bottom line, you got to have more creativity without Anthony Richardson and that threat. And the offensive line needs to do a better job. I thought that Minnesota game was really the first game I felt like the defensive line controlled the line of scrimmage and they were knocking us back instead of us doing that. For most of the season, we've reset the line of scrimmage, and I didn't think we did that against Minnesota. So it's a combination of, you know, really all facets, but the O-line does need to do a better job. It was not their best performance last week up in Minneapolis.
Again, he's great. Joe Wrights, you hear him on Colts Roundtable Live Monday nights. You heard him last night here. He joins us on the Payless Liquors hotline. Joe, I want to go back to the quarterback decision, and you mentioned that the tap out as a former offensive lineman would have frustrated you. How much, if any, do you think that played into the ultimate benching of Anthony Richardson?
You know, hard for me to say, but I do think everything plays into everything when you're evaluating performance. And I just think it was a unique situation, and I know that he'll learn from it and, you know, get better. But I did, depending on what you want to see or read in national media, et cetera, that, you know, it was reported that, you know, the benching lit a fire under him. And I think that's a great thing. You know, I've been benched. You know, I've been called into the head coach's office or the GM's office and said, hey, you're not playing good enough. We're putting somebody in there that is playing better than you. And basically, in a night, I'm going to use some euphemisms, you better get your stuff together. That's motivating for a player, and that's motivating for a young player. And I didn't want to be in that position when I was playing, but I'm not going to say that I didn't need it or that it didn't help me. And I think competitors understand that, and AR is a fierce competitor. And again, I do think long-term, how this is all going to play out, nobody knows. We can craft a million different scenarios. Only one's going to play out. But I think that it's going to help him. It's going to help him mature on and off the field. And I do think that he's going to be your quarterback again for the Colts in the future. It's just a matter, is it in 4 weeks or is it starting the 2025 season? That's just my personal view.
Joe, obviously the NFL acronym "not for long" is very, very true. So I think anytime you see a move like this, the common theme is, you know, the locker room, a lot of these guys are not for long. They want the win now, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think, given the course of quarterback with this franchise, there's any percentage, albeit a small one, any percentage of that locker room that says, no, we have tried the Band-Aid. We've tried the old quarterback. We need to commit to this kid and live with those growing pains? Or do you think all these guys are pretty much in unison saying, no, win now, win now, win now. I don't care how old he is. I don't have time for patience.
Yeah, I think that every player in that locker room is saying, whoever gives us the best chance to win, that's who we want to play. And I do think that Flacco gives you the best chance to win right now, you know, with some of the regression of AR and just, you know, again, some of the ability. Now, it didn't look good in Minnesota and it didn't play well because, you know, we were worse in a lot of places. But in terms of being able to, you know, complete third downs, move the chains, possess the football, that's where we're getting crushed is time of possession, not converting third down. I mean, we're like, you know, less than 20% over the last 3 weeks. It's almost impossible to win football games that way. But I would guess that if you pulled all those 53 guys, you know, they're in support of that decision for Flacco because they want to win now. It's hard. I mean, your career could be, you know, 2 years long, 1 year long. For some of these guys, this might be the last season they play in the NFL, and it's really hard to get to the playoffs, and you want to make sure that you get there. I also think, too, that you have a lot of guys that they came out and they supported Richardson, you know, in the media, and I agree with all that, too. Whoever your quarterback is, that's who you're getting behind, and that's who you're playing with. But I would say that I think probably the majority of the guys like the decision just because I think it gives you the chance to win now. And, Kevin, your point's such a good one. It's such a short time we all have in the National Football League.
Joe Wrights with us here on The Fan on this Tuesday. Joe, I'm wondering, you mentioned Flacco. I was surprised how bad Flacco was for the most part. You put him in there for the easy stuff. He missed the easy stuff. Third downs, they missed on third downs. What will Shane Steichen do this week, do you think, to cater the offense now towards Flacco a little bit more, given that he's been given the job here for the next month, 2 months, whatever it may be?
Yeah, I'm sure you'll see some game plan specific stuff. Again, I think it was a weird game in terms of, I said this, last night. We only had 25 snaps through the first 43 minutes of the game. And because of the Grover destroy play, which, by the way, I mean, you talk about an offensive lineman's, worst nightmare to replay that over and over and over in your head. But because of how the game played in some early, turnovers and then 3 and outs, so I really felt like the offense never got in a flow. Sometimes you just have those odd games. But again, Joe, the interception was really bad. And I thought in the fourth quarter, he took some shots down the field to try to get some chunk yardage when he had some checkdowns, one to Taylor and one to Sermon. So I think, again, it was a bad performance. You erase it. But, hey, this is a week-to-week league. And we would always say you go from the penthouse to the outhouse and back really, really quick. And I think for the Colts, what's motivating is you got a Buffalo team who's 7-2. You have a quarterback who's arguably the MVP at the midseason point, Josh Allen, throw for 2,000 yards, 17 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I think we're getting Buffalo at a good time. They've won 4 in a row, and I'm a big believer that every game you win in the NFL, it gets harder and harder and harder to win that next one. And so people might think I'm crazy because of how we looked on Sunday Night Football, but I really like the Colts' chances against Buffalo, and I think it's because we're the more desperate team. And generally in sports, at any level, no matter what sport you're playing, the more desperate team, the team who absolutely needs it, is going to go out and got a good chance to win. And we certainly need it more than Buffalo does at this point in the season.
Well, in the 5th grade Raiders, they were pretty desperate every Sunday during the season. Shout out to Joe Wrights and the boys, the pipeline to Guerin alive and well there. Joe, congrats on that. Most importantly, a happy birthday to Jill. And as always, sir, we appreciate you the time.
All right. Well, thanks, fellas. Have a great day.
That's the great Joe Wrights, Payless Liquors Hotline. The listen on Monday night. Excellent, as always, Matt Taylor, Rick Venturi, and Joe. I think he is spot on in the run game diversity specifically. I mean, if you were talking about where this offense it has to improve, to me, with Joe Flacco being the quarterback for Sunday and I guess for the foreseeable future, you can't live with the run game creating a one-dimensional offense.
No. Coach talked about that last night. I listened in. He did a lot.
To ignite that, and, is it more perimeter runs? It seemed like everything up the middle Sunday night was a struggle for Taylor. Get that athleticism in space. Ashton Doolin on a couple end rounds was actually a successful play for the Colts on Sunday night, but I thought Joe was spot on there. That is a huge part of this offense that needs revival quick.
This might be something we talk about later on. I think my biggest takeaway from the Colts game, other than the offense was a complete mess. we know it. We've talked about it. We've harped about it. We don't need to continue. Is I was just surprised, I guess. And we have a promo running of JMV. I was listening to him yesterday, and he's right that, now all the AR people have come out of the woodwork, right? And it's like, well, you guys don't need to brag or push too hard about your guy starting. He wasn't any good, and Flacco wasn't any good. I know Steichen came out yesterday and was like, well, it's just one game, and I do understand that. It was one game, perhaps a quote-unquote bad spot there in Minnesota. I was interested how many people, I felt this, KB, maybe even a little bit with you, that there was a lot of, okay, we tried the Joe Flacco thing for one game, now put Anthony Richardson back in the game. I felt like there were people on my Twitter feed that have been strong of being tired of Anthony Richardson. I want to win now. It's Joe Flacco. And then you got a taste of Joe Flacco on Sunday night, and now you want to go back to Anthony Richardson. I mean, I guess that's the way it was always going to be. But, if Flacco comes out and stinks it up against Buffalo, and that offense doesn't look much better at all, I don't know what we're going to talk about on Monday. Like, are we going to sit here and say you need to put AR back in the game because it's obvious that Flacco right now is not going to cut it? Like, I don't know what we're going to do.
Well, I think they should have benched Richardson in the first place. But that's, I guess, neither here nor there with that conversation.
Yeah, but people aren't consistent. That's my point. People were ready to jump off the Flacco bandwagon after one game, after they screamed about it for the last 3 weeks, how they wanted to see the guy play.
I think no matter who is playing quarterback, we can't lose sight of this. The Colts need better support offensively. I mean, I'm talking Steichen. I'm talking penalties on the offensive line. I thought penalties in general by some key veteran players were really costly and have been costly the last couple of weeks. The run game, of course, we just hit on it with Joe there. And then lastly, I think you got to have a realer conversation about Michael Pittman Jr.
Well, they disagreed. I mean, they dodged that every way they could dodge it yesterday.
There is arguably no player in that locker room that I think you respect more for their toughness than Michael Pittman Jr. He should be commended for it. It's just not working. Last 3 weeks, 10 targets, 2 catches. I mean, that is an awful catch percentage, and he's gutting it out, and it's, again, beyond commendable. And boy, I hope Max Bowen is the toughness of Michael Pittman Jr. one day, and all these great things you can say about him. But damn, it's just not working right now, and I don't know. Does that mean more targets for Pierce or A.D. Mitchell snaps? Do they need to increase? I think those are all conversations that you have to have, because right now, your overall support, whether it's Richardson or Flacco, from the play caller, the offensive guru, I say in quotes with Steichen, and on down, I don't think you're supporting, no matter who's playing quarterback, enough.
Well, yeah, then you go to the offensive line. And listen, I don't know if people love these numbers, but the Pro Football Focus numbers, the pass block grades for the offensive line, really outside of Quinn Nelson, they're pretty dismal. And then on the run block grades, and all this came out yesterday, I mean, Ryan Kelly is below a number of 50 on both pass and run block grades, which is pretty damning. And honestly, it says that Ryan Kelly probably should not be a starter for this team, which is kind of a crazy thing. But, I mean, your pass block grades aren't good, and your run block grades for 3 of the 5 guys on that offensive line also haven't been very good. And so I think, to me, listen, we can talk about quarterback. We can talk about how you get the running game going. But to me, this offensive line is going to be what it has been the last couple weeks. It's not going to be good enough.
We will see, and I should note, Pittman Jr. snaps did decrease a decent amount against Minnesota. He was at 95% in Houston, which is a huge number, and then it went down to 76 in Minnesota. Do we see that trend continue at all here moving forward? Again, Rick Carlisle, 9 o'clock. I know a lot of us Tuesdays at 8 a.m. are used to Rick. 9 a.m., they spent the night in Dallas last night. Great fourth quarter for the Pacers. They got off to the big lead, Andy, 15-2. It was Jason Kidd taking the timeout of disgust early. I was certainly concerned about them closing. It's been an issue this season. When you think of closers, I would say Luka and Kyrie and a Klay Thompson probably fall near the top of that list, but it was the Pacers building a fourth quarter lead, holding on to that fourth quarter lead, all of them making plays. And again, Miles Turner last night, outstanding in the return to Dallas.
Yeah, they needed Turner. Turner, I won't say it's been a slump, but he even said after the game, I've been taking a back seat here for a few games, and they needed him not to take a back seat last night. So Turner was fantastic. And then, obviously with injuries, the other thing that comes to mind is, we talked about, they have 10 or 11 guys, and we said early on, it's going to work itself out. And then, obviously you get Wiseman's injury. We haven't talked to Carlisle since the Isaiah Jackson injury as well. So that's a bummer. I just threw this in there on the morning checkdown. I'm wondering what you think of it. Benedict Mathurin has had so many opportunities. We think of, last year he had the opportunity at the beginning of the year. He had the opportunity, I should say, during the year as well, to kind of be a starter on this team and never stuck. He got injured, and we know what happened last season. To me, this season is so much about him maturing and, what exactly is his role going to be with this team after they went to the Eastern Conference Finals and he wasn't out there playing. KB, I wonder if he gives the starting job back when Nesmith is healthy and ready to go. And again, starting doesn't always matter. Minutes matter. He had 32 last night, but I thought there were a couple possessions where Mathurin did not look like he was a liability on defense. And then, for me, he made plays in the fourth quarter. And then on top of it, last 3 games, he's averaging 8 rebounds a game. And, every time the Pacers, I think Eddie Garrison put this in our notes after the game. Shout out to Eddie G. In all 7 games for the Pacers this season, the team that has won the rebounding battle has won the game. Well, if I know I can throw Benedict Mathurin in and I'm going to get 8 rebounds a game, and even if that number comes down a little bit, 6 or 7, those are quality minutes, and that's a quality stat line when you can throw up 7 or 8 rebounds. So for me, they got it done in the fourth quarter. A couple guys got off the schneid, as they would say, maybe a little bit with Haliburton and definitely with Miles. And then I've been kind of iffy on what I've thought of Benedict Mathurin, but the last few games, he's been one of their better players.
Yeah, I mean, they gave him the assignment of Luka Doncic. I saw that on the first possession. I thought, oh boy, I might need to pour myself a drink here to watch this for 48 minutes. But I thought he did a halfway decent job. Luka was 9 of 24. I mean, in true Luka fashion, he eventually gets to those numbers, but it wasn't the most efficient getting to those numbers. And Mathurin hit a huge 3 in front of the Pacers bench to help ice it there late. But, you can point to a lot of guys. I mean, Turner, Haliburton, Siakam just shouldn't be taken for granted what he's done here this season. Toppin and McConnell coming off the bench. And I just felt like watching the Pacers last night, I said to myself several times, that looks like them.
Yeah. Do you think Dallas helps that? Because Dallas will play that game with them, with who they have.
Right. It probably does. But and maybe it was the second night of a back-to-back commitment. Dallas was playing second night of a back-to-back. Now they didn't go too deep into the fourth quarter the previous night, but maybe the Pacers had that concerted approach of, hey, let's run, which is weird because, the Pacers have got all these guys in the injury report right now. You would think maybe it'd be a little bit of a slower-paced game, but I just felt like Indiana got back to kind of its 2023-2024 roots a bit there with how they played. So 134-127 last night. Again, Rick Carlisle coming up at 9 o'clock. Paulo Banchero, less Orlando Magic Wednesday. It's wild looking at the 3 Pacers wins this season. The Pistons.
The Pistons, yeah.
The defending champs in Boston, fully healthy with that starting lineup.
Oh, yeah.
And then the Mavericks last night, the defending runner-up, also with a healty starting lineup.
Yeah, they didn't have Derek Lively. I think that was the only one. College basketball, who did you watch last night besides the locals? Anyone?
I was
games?
all Purdue.
Okay.
And then I did that FS1 look around, and luckily they did focus kind of on Butler late. I was like, is Butler going to pull this out? And they did that. Jamil Telfort with some big plays late there. And then by that point, I felt like I was Monday Night Football and Pacers after that. I guess Gonzaga rolled Baylor.
Yeah,
is that what I saw late?
So Gonzaga rolled Baylor by 40, and there's a play at the end of the game. You guys will like this. So Mark Few's son is on the team, and he is the last guy on the bench. He is the typical, son of a coach, Brad Calipari, and the poor son. I forget his name. Stephen Few. I don't know his name. He got dunked
Steven
on.
Izzo.
He got dunked on by a Baylor player, dude. It's an ugly dunk. It's like an ugly
Tell
dunk.
me he's trying to take a charge.
Yeah, no, he was trying to, and he kind of jumped up, and then he realized he got up in the air, and he realized this guy, yeah, he put it on him, man. It was not good. And it was a 40-point game with 2 minutes to go. I would say the interesting takeaways, Texas A&M's number 13 in the country. They lost to Central Florida. You got your first court storming last night, day 1 of the college basketball season.
I did love to see that. Now,
you had to.
Correct me if I'm wrong. That's Purdue's opponent at the Crossroads, right? A&M?
Oh, yeah. I believe so.
And Indiana's marquee non-conference team, not named the Atlantis tournament, is South Carolina. They lost to North Florida last night. So the non-conference schedules for Purdue and Indiana. Purdue's got a little bit more meat on the bone.
They have Alabama coming up.
With their non-conference schedule at Marquette. Indiana does not have that, so not good there.
And Ohio State beat Texas.
Yes, so that was the other notable result, I think, last night. So, again, certainly more on the college basketball front. Again, coming up 8 o'clock hour, anything trade deadline-wise the Colts should focus on. We'll get into more Colts conversation on that. Again, Rick Carlisle at 9. And just FYI for those making that morning commute, trying to sneak in a little polling action, I thought that the polling sites that I drive by, the crowds were long.
Yeah.
Frankly,
I'm seeing pictures.
As long as I don't really remember. So adjust accordingly if you would like here on that. I know some people have reached out and said, hey, not as bad where I'm at. Others have said, no. It's about as bad as I've seen it. So just a little FYI here on Election Day.
Yeah, all the IBC men and women, go ahead and get your naps in now if you can. All right, coming up on the other side again, Rick Carlisle not until 9 o'clock. We'll talk some Colts on the other side. I have a thought on Chris Ballard. KB, I know you have a thought on the trade deadline today in the NFL. We'll take a break. We'll do that next. 8 o'clock hour around the corner right here. It's a Tuesday on The Fan.
Well, Tuesdays at 8 o'clock usually means Rick Carlisle. That'll be 9 o'clock today, and 9 Eastern for us, 8 Central for Rick Carlisle. They spent the night in Dallas after their victory last night over the Mavs. So Rick Carlisle coming up at 9. Stephanie White enjoyed her press conference yesterday. The new Fever head coach, certainly an icon in the state, going to join us coming up at 9:30. Andy, it is the most important day of the year. It's NFL trade deadline.
Yes, it's all that's going on today. It's a big day.
That's why the lines were so long at these respective churches and administrative buildings on the commute in.
Right.
Here, we have seen, I would say, a decent amount of NFL trade activity so far. Certainly, if you watched Monday Night Football last night, DeAndre Hopkins found a little fountain of youth with the Chiefs there and being a key part of that win. Colts front, we have not seen much in the Chris Ballard era. Just to go over the 8 years as a in-season GM. Zach Moss, Nyheim Hines, and a draft pick. That's it. Nyheim Hines, I guess, for Zach Moss and a draft pick. And if you remember, Hines wasn't too happy with his role in 2022. I think that played into some of it. I don't know if I'd call that like an outright sell by a team that was certainly trending in a poor direction during that year. So I don't know if there's much. First off, there's no precedent with Ballard of much trade deadline activity, good or bad, buy or sell. So I look at them at 4 and 5 and think, well, last week, Andy, they said win now. And then they have what happens on Sunday night.
Right.
Does that influence it any way, shape, or form? Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think so. They also said last week that they were evaluating everything. And as far as I can tell, the only two guys that got evaluated were Tyler Goodson and Anthony Richardson. Am I wrong? I mean, Tyler Goodson basically got benched. We thought he could be a backup running back. He's not. We know the love affair they have with Trey Sermon. I just don't see it. I mean, I know nationally, the names to watch. Zadarius Smith is a defensive end, defensive lineman there in Cleveland. Could he go to the Detroit Lions? That's a name out there. Mike Williams, the Jets, that's been a bust. Jacoby Myers, Kendrick Bourne, a couple different wide receivers. I don't know. Would Seattle ever think of moving on from DK Metcalf? I know that's been a conversation nationally the last week or so. So nationally, I think you're going to get a couple notable names possibly get moved. I just don't think the Colts are going to do anything. I mean, do you? I can't. Here's my problem. I can't even come up with something that they would do. Like, I'm trying to think of a name that they would add at this point. And Ballard, I know we've played, I know we're going into week 10, so things have changed. But, going into this season, they left money on the table salary cap-wise. Guys that they drafted ended up not making the 53-man roster. It is, we've talked about it on this radio station. Every show has on what they did and did not do in free agency. To me, that leads me to believe that we're not going to see anything of value here for the Colts. And I'm not even crushing them over it. I'm trying to think of a way, and I know you have a list of names. I'm trying to think of what they even could do that would make sense. If you're telling me that we went into that Minnesota game as a 7 seed and you lost that game, and the rhetoric is, it's one bad game, let's not overreact, that you're going to go sell off pieces, I also can't see that to be the case. And, there's a bunch of guys on this team, even if you moved on from, you're not going to get anything for it. And you get a draft pick that probably won't even make your 53-man roster. So I want it to be more of a topic. I don't know where to take the trade deadline locally for us today at all.
Yeah, it's I think it's a difficult one to have because, there's not a ton of clarity on it. Again, I think people poo-poo the day 3 draft picks. There is a part of me that's like, well, if in the back of your mind you're thinking you might need to do something crazy to trade up for a quarterback come April, which I know sounds outrageous.
Well,
do you want to stockpile picks for some sort of trade package? The fact that I'm even saying that out loud sounds pretty ridiculous.
I'm surprised you didn't vomit while you said that, honestly.
Again, I guess positionally, if you're buying depth at running back, tight end, do you feel like you could still use a little bit of corner help? Defensive line, is there anything there that you could possibly look at? Those are some positions. Then if you're on the flip side of it, and again, I know sell has a very aggressive term, but I would have the roster approach, Andy, of if I am not re-signing you, I would like to probably look into some possible return instead of you just walking for nothing in free agency. So let me throw out free agent
give me some names. Go ahead.
In 2025. I would categorize these guys as notable free agents.
Sure.
Now, they're different levels, certainly, of notable. But let me throw out the full list at you, and you pluck one or two out.
All right.
Joe Flacco, Trey Sermon, Ashton Dulin, Mo Alley Cox, Kylan Granson, Ryan Kelly, Dayo Adengbo, EJ Speed, Julian Blackman. Any of those names?
Okay, boy, I tell you, I mean, the last three are the only ones. I mean,
Adengbo, Speed, and Blackman?
Yeah, those would be the only ones. If you said, hey, we maybe could get something back for these guys, this would be the conversation. I mean, the other one is, what are they going to do with EJ Speed? Do they give him some money? Do you give him a Zaire Franklin contract? Do you let him walk like Bobby Okereke a couple years ago? I don't know. I'm asking. I don't know what they think there. Julian Blackman, he would be the one probably highest on my list, given that, I mean, this year they let him walk out of there and they only signed him to a one-year deal. So the thought process of you continually going down the road of just signing him to one-year deals, I guess I don't think that's going to happen in back-to-back seasons. But, I mean, isn't this where the Colts are has been frustrating for the fans, but it also kind of rears its ugly head here, does it not? That you're not one of these two-win teams. You're not one of these teams that is out of it, or listen, I think there's 7-8 teams in the NFL that are actually almost trying to lose at that point. You're not that, but you're also not a for sure playoff team, and you also don't feel great about yourself. You're stuck in the middle, and that's where the Colts have been. They're absolutely stuck in the middle. I mean, Joe Flacco would have had real value here had Anthony Richardson not have gone through what he's gone through. But Anthony Richardson, whether it's poor play, something off the field they didn't like, or a combination of both, hasn't been very good. So, to me, they're not going to wave the white flag. And I feel like almost any of these guys, especially the last three, KB, if they moved away from then, how would we not? I mean, who's the backup if they get rid of Blackman?
Well, that's a question that I have.
What would they even do?
That's a question I have when debating some of this stuff is, do you have the aging veteran atop the depth chart and the youngish draft pick behind that player? Blackman is an example of the opposite of that. There really isn't much.
No, there's nothing
behind him of note. There's not this young guy that all of a sudden you want to give reps to. Now, I think there are a couple examples of that. Now, Jalen Carlisle is not healthy, but if he were healthy, do you look at that with EJ Speed at all? I think EJ Speed's a pretty good player, so I'd probably like to see him continue to play this out. It's really the first year he's ever been a full-time starter. And then could you re-sign him in the offseason? Ryan Kelly, to me, is probably the best example of it. He is one of the oldest players on the roster. He is in a contract year. It's rare to see a guy sign, 3-4 contracts with a specific team. And Tanner Bortolini as a fourth-round pick center, to me, if you're drafting a center around 4, you're going to give him the starting keys pretty early.
Right.
And when Bortolini has played this year, I think it's looked fairly well.
And Ryan Kelly hasn't been good on top of it. He just hasn't.
So that, I think, is the realest conversation of any of these that you see on this list. Now, do I think they'll ultimately do anything? Probably not. But I think that is one that you would have. As we bring up trade discussions, you brought up the names of Zadarius Smith earlier in the show. He's been traded.
To the Lions?
The Detroit Lions are acquiring Zadarius Smith from the Browns. So this is pretty much what we've seen so far, Andy. Win now team, good team trades with selling bad team. That's what all these trades have pretty much been. Hopkins to the Chiefs, Amari Cooper to the Bills, Deontay Johnson to the Ravens. I know I'm missing another wideout that has been moved. That's what we have seen so far. This is another example of that. So the Colts will see Zadarius Smith here in a couple weeks.
You were thinking of Amari Cooper. That was the other one you were thinking of. Did you say him? You're thinking of Cooper?
Yeah.
I can't remember. Well, but this is the problem. We don't know what the Colts are here. They're not sellers.
Right.
But they're also not going to be buyers, probably, right?
That's what makes it awkward. Luke accurately points out here, he goes, an example of a young guy behind a veteran starter that could use playing time?
Okay.
It's quarterback. and his name is Anthony Richardson.
Fair enough. That's fair enough.
Luke, very good.
Yeah, it is.
Tight end at all, Moali Cox, Kylan Granson, they're both free agents. Again, I mean, we're really grasping at straws here.
Yeah, this is grasping at straws, brother.
In all likelihood, I don't think you'll see much, but it is funny because, last week when you make the move to Flacco, that is a statement of saying, hey, we'll send the 5th or 6th round pick for something before the trade deadline, right? I mean, now that's nothing how they operate in the offseason, but that Flacco move indicates that. So if you want to reverse it, I'm bringing up free agents that you could potentially cast off. But if you want to reverse it, if you're going to go to Flacco, then theoretically the day 3 pick that you might want to dangle for a player is on the table. Granted, that's not something we've ever seen this organization do.
Reminder, if you're checking in for Rick Carlisle, we'll have him coming up today at 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock, Rick Carlisle will join us here on the Wake Up Call. All right, let me ask you 2 questions. First one, if they could add a position, in your opinion, what would it be? Mine would I don't mind saying it. Mine would be tight end. And I know David Njoku's not going to go from Cleveland. They want to keep him. He is part of what they're doing. And I'm also of the belief that I don't think there are just any tight ends sitting out there that you could go get. But if
tight end was my first thought when you said that.
If I had my wish, improving this tight end position just has to be something that they do.
Yeah, tight end was my first thought. Again, is there a little bit of a jolt you could get at running back when you do turn to non-Jonathan Taylor reps? I think that is something, I don't love the idea of necessarily giving up a draft pick for a running back in terms of a trade.
What about Javonte Williams? Denver Broncos. Your boy Notre Dame's going to push him out of the way, possibly. What about Javonte Williams?
Audric Estime there in Denver. Yeah. It's a little first and second down centric for me. Like, I tend to think, is there a pass catching specific back that you could help out? I mean, it just seems like when it's probably not on Taylor, but when they target Taylor in the passing game, he's just not as efficient as I would like it to be. I think Taylor has some struggles. There was a play on Sunday I'd have to go back and watch. I thought Taylor had a bust in pass protection. So again, those guys are pretty valuable to NFL teams, but that would be something I would look for. So again, just a reminder, 4 o'clock trade deadline today. You brought up something earlier. I don't know if it's necessarily a question for Carlisle, but when Rick joins us at 9, we have seen with Aaron Nesmith's injury, Benedict Mathurin in the starting lineup. Is that something that sticks once Nesmith comes back? I do think that's a point. And I thought last night in particular, I thought Mathurin made a few more Nesmith plays than I've ever seen him make.
Okay.
And that is attack a rebound or two. There were a couple times where he was attacking a rebound is he close to a triple-double? It was like one of those things. I'm like, I've never seen Benedict Mathurin go after rebounds like this.
He's chasing a triple-double.
Is there an individual stat that I'm not aware of that he's going after here? And again, I thought his defense was okay. I don't want to overreact to it, but...
Well, listen, the defense for the Pacers is just okay. Right. Come on.
Luka was 9-24. If you told Rick Carlisle last night Benedict Mathurin's going to guard Luka and he's going to go 9-24, you would have said, okay, thank you. I will sign up for that. So, I don't know if it's the most pressing Pacer question right now, but I think undoubtedly Mathurin has been good here through the first 7 games, and I think that is a conversation that'll be interesting whenever Nesmith is healthy.
Yeah, again, I'm not totally obsessed with who is starting, but most of the time, if you start, that means you're in better rotations and you're playing more minutes. I mean, that's just usually what it means. Now, there are times where a guy starts and gets 17, 18, 19 minutes, and the guy coming off the bench is going to get the rest of those minutes in a game. But you look at the last 3 games, 43, 32, and 32. Those are the minutes from Benedict Mathurin, and I wonder, I'm just throwing it out there, and again, I know that Nesmith, this is an injury that could, I guess we'll ask Rick coming up at 9, but don't you feel like this is one of those injuries that could last just a little while here? This is not going to be a 2-game thing. You could see this be a couple weeks. You could see it take a little bit of time. To me, why not? That would be, I know you say everyone would scream defense, but, if Mathurin could be 75% of what Nesmith brings you on defense, and you would still be playing Nesmith. And by the way, we've seen Nesmith be the odd man out on the bench at times. I just think what Mathurin does scoring the basketball, and now you mentioned the last 3 games averaging 8 rebounds per game, KB, what he's doing rebounding the basketball. I think there's a chance here. this is the golden opportunity for Benedict Mathurin to be what everybody has been harping for almost 3 years that he can be. Is that fair? Early in the season, they need him. They went through some injuries. The guy right in front of him has an injury that's going to keep him out. Like, this is go time. Benedict Mathurin saw the team go to the Eastern Conference Finals. He has challenged himself. Carlisle has challenged him. Why would this not be the time that Mathurin becomes the guy that you want him to be?
I have a ridiculous question
okay,
for
let's
you
go.
in 10 minutes.
Ooh.
But
got to wait 10 minutes.
Yeah. I'm not ready for it at 8:17. I'll be ready for it about 8:29.
Okay.
I just think, again, it goes back to the opening night conversation we had with Mathurin, and I wanted to make sure we don't lose sight of what makes Mathurin Mathurin. Well, why was he the 6th overall pick? Why was I infatuated with him coming out of Arizona? It's because of, I thought Carlisle actually described it really, really well. This was Rick last night. He goes, at some point, Mathurin will strike.
It's a good way to put it.
And, you can label him a microwave. You can label him. And again, at times, you don't know when he's going to strike, and that can bring fear because it's like, oh, boy, he just ran over 2 dudes, and it's back-to-back offensive fouls, and now he's on the bench. But you don't know when he's going to strike. And last night in the fourth quarter, he had a few of those plays where all of a sudden he ends up with it, and it's a big bucket. And he jab steps Luka Doncic 3 times in front of the Pacers bench, and Luka's saying after the game, he was talking you-know-what to me.
Oh, yeah.
And he just rises up and
he
buries one
to
help ice the game. So I thought last night he probably appeased Rick Carlisle more on the other end of the floor. Then I also want to make sure that we remember what makes him so unique, and that is the ability to have the no-fear mindset to score. Because last night, I thought for the first time really all season, the Pacers looked like the Pacers. They scored 134, if you want to point to that total. They got out and played with pace. I thought the offensive flow was really, really good, et cetera, all of those things. Mathurin is a key part in that. But also early in the season, Andy, they haven't had that same offensive rhythm. So they've needed his ability to be that microwave when you don't know, necessarily when he's going to strike, those sorts of things. So I will be interested when Nesmith gets back, exactly how that plays out. Again, Andrew Nembhard did play last night. He was back in the starting lineup there, so they went with Mathurin for Nesmith. Obviously had the other 4 normal starters. And I want to make sure that we give the flowers to Miles Turner he deserves for last night. 30-11. I would think this is a game he circles on the calendar, being a Dallas guy. He's indispensable for you right now. They didn't play Enrique Freeman. They went with Siakam and Toppin as the small ball 5s when Turner was off the floor. It's one of those things where he's probably in an awkward state of how aggressive he wants to be defensively right now with foul trouble. But, boy, he was big last night. And when he gets those switches with smalls on him, at times that hasn't worked out for him. And I thought he took advantage of a couple of those as well last night. So great work from Miles Turner.
Just quickly, going back to Mathurin before we get to a morning check down. Boy, some in the audience may remember this. I don't know why I remember it. Remember last year, we played a piece of sound from Draymond Green in his podcast. Do you remember this? Where he's like, the key to the Indiana Pacers is that boy Benedict Mathurin. Do you happen to remember that at all?
I think he called him the X Factor.
Yeah,
he
called him the X Factor, says, he can do things that other guys on the team can't do. Basically the rhetoric that we've kind of spouted out here about Mathurin. But he said, Draymond's not the only one that has said that. That is something that has been said by a lot of basketball people now. Before I got here, right? You guys have been talking about that for definitely more than a year. I just think this is his time. They need, there is a need here. There has been a challenge here. If this guy is playing really good basketball, playing 33 minutes a game, it's going to be really disappointing if he goes back to playing 18 minutes a game. That's where I am now. I don't know why the last couple games have done that to me, but they have. And I don't have a great reason as to why. He's obviously more dynamic than Aaron Nesmith. But to me, Nesmith, I think you can play him his minutes for coming off the bench. And, in the fourth quarter, if you need more defense, fine. The Mathurin maybe is out of the game. But, if it's 108, and you have 2 minutes to go in the game, I know I want Benedict Mathurin in that game.
One thing I want to point out from last night, and Mathurin is obviously the poster child of it, but I think Ben Shepherd falls into this category. I think Jarris Walker falls into this category. And obviously TJ McConnell and Obi Toppin are a little bit more in the veteran front. When the Pacers go to their bench, those guys are pretty darn fearless. All of them. And again, Shepard and Walker, as younger guys, you probably have more of those questions. But so many times in the NBA, Andy, I see teams go to the bench and the young guys get in, and it's pretty obvious that they're young. I feel like that's a nice quality. And probably a lot of that is, frankly, just character of those individuals. But, Shepard's an older college player. Obviously, Walker is the flip side of that. He wasn't that. But, to sign up to play for Kelvin Sampson, you got to be wired a little differently. So, those guys, it's just a nice quality the Pacers have. And I thought last night their depth played very, very well.
Leave Sampson alone. He's never done anything wrong in his career. It's an outstanding Hall of Fame coach.
Benedict Mathurin, I think, is the key to that team because I love his potential. I love that draft pick for the Pacers. And I think he's on a good trajectory.
There we go.
It's a nice find, Mark Dykton.
Boy, that's deep in the
You've been quiet
archives.
for the first 90 minutes, and you just chime in with
Hacking up
that.
a lung over here.
I'm worried about Mark. He hasn't felt well for 2 weeks. I'm legit worried about him. It's been 2 weeks.
He's got the cough that it's been like 31 degrees lately, and I'm like, wait, it hasn't been 31 degrees, so now I am worried about Mark.
Wait till it gets
the
31
studio's
degrees.
like 90 degrees, and then you go in the hallway, and it's like 60 degrees.
Well, the old Petri dish that the girls are bringing home is certainly impacting you. Thank you to Mark for gutting it out. Again, Rick Carlisle, 9 o'clock, Stephanie White, 9:30. Let's go ahead and check it down.
All right, we'll get to the Pacers and obviously a busy, busy night of college basketball last night. Can I say this as an aside, KB? We talked about the NBA's opening night. College basketball has a much better opening night than the NBA does. How did that happen? You don't
do
think
they,
so?
though?
I think
don't
they
know.
do. Oh, I think. Last night I was excited. There are games everywhere. Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
Except
but
just 1 or 2 games. I watched 40 games
I'd like
last
to
night.
see coaches be a little bit more, we don't care about the opening night loss and have a few more marquee games.
You think New Jersey or J&T or some of these Texas, Corpus Christi Islanders?
Yeah, it just wasn't really doing it
No,
for me.
Wright State. I saw Kentucky played them anyway. So we'll get to that here in a second. Let's start with the Colts. Obviously, the big news yesterday, Flex out of that Sunday night game against the Jets. Not a surprise. So week 11, it's going to be the Jets. It's going to be the Colts, and that's going to be a 1 o'clock game, I believe, there on CBS. Let me give you some Steichen sound. Steichen was asked yesterday, I believe this was your question, KB, why have you guys not been able to get to like 20 points and have a better looking offense than you did last year? Last year you had Gardner Minshew. This year it hasn't been the same, even with Joe Flacco. Here's the answer.
We've got to get more consistent in everything we do. And we got to have great preparation throughout the week and put our guys in position to go make those plays. And we're going through that process right now, and we're grinding through it. We got a lot of football left, got a lot of faith and trust in our football team. And we're going to put the work in this week to go beat Buffalo.
All right, so I don't know if he answered it, but it was a good question nonetheless. A good try by you. It's all you can do. It's a long answer, at least. Here's Steichen. Was it one bad game, perhaps, just for Joe Flacco?
It was one game. It was one game that he went out there. And, again, we got a lot of football left. We got 8 left. We got Buffalo this week, and looking forward to that challenge.
Again, Colts and Bills coming up week 10, a 4-point underdog in that one, and they've been flexed out of Sunday Night Football. Don't be bad, don't be boring, don't be old at quarterback. The Colts proved they were that on Sunday Night Football, so NBC and company said, see ya. So back to 1 o'clock with the Jets. Speaking of prime time, last night, Monday Night Football. Boy, for those that stayed up, they were delivered a great, great game. First off, Mother Nature impacted some things. You had a Patrick Mahomes injury scare. He went back in the game and appeared to be fine. And you had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a very gutty effort. Baker Mayfield and company lead a late touchdown drive. They have the opportunity to go for 2 with 30? Was it exactly 30? Somewhere around there?
Exactly 30, yeah.
Yeah, 30 seconds or so in the game. Todd Bowles, he's old school, he's defense. He decides to kick the extra point. That came back to bite them. T. Swift was in the building. You knew the coin toss was going to Kansas City. They marched down the field. Kareem Hunt game-winning touchdown in overtime. Baker Mayfield never touches the football. Should have gone for 2.
I know it doesn't matter that much, and I'm just whining about it. They did have a false start that they didn't call at like the 4-yard line against the Chiefs last night. It's all over the internet because that's what we do now.
Yeah, that was late. Was that
it's
in
just
overtime?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And then they scored the next play and they won the game. So it's just what we do with the Kansas City Chiefs.
They are undefeated, 9-0 on the season.
Purdue last night, winners 90-73. You had 15-9 from Trey Kaufman-Wren. You had 21 from Lawyer. Let's see, Braden Smith, 2 rebounds away away from a triple-double there. And then this one, way too close. Konzo Martin almost walked into Butler and got the win. 72-65. Butler did win last night over Missouri State, but turnovers, the problem here. 19 turnovers for Thad Matta's crew last night. Not going to be good enough.
No, not at all. We'll get more into that here a little bit later. Other local scores, shout out to Paul Casaro. Cool seeing the post-game locker room at the Fairgrounds yesterday. He gets his first win with IU. Indy, Ball State lost to Georgia State. And if my eyes didn't deceive me, it looked like Indiana State lost by 100 to Florida Atlantic.
Oh, did they? The Fighting JMVs.
I swear it was like a 30-point loss. I should probably double-check that here. But
oh, no.
Unfortunately, the Matthew Graves era there, they lost a whole lot off that team. I didn't realize that the Conwell, the Pike kid, he is now at Xavier.
Yeah,
they were doing
that's a little bit of a rebuild.
97-64. The Trees lost last night to Florida Atlantic.
Okay, well, I thought it was actually going to be a little bit worse. You kind of set that up. That
worse
it might
than
be
33 to Florida Atlantic?
Might be worse. Well, Florida Atlantic, they returned their entire team from last year. I'm kidding. I have no idea. Let's take a break. Coming up on the other side, Kevin Bowen says, I have a ridiculous question. Are you ready to give that ridiculous question?
I am.
All right, we'll do it next here. It's a Tuesday on The Fan.
Rick Carlisle coming up. 9 o'clock. Safe travels in your commutes in this morning. Again, some of the polling stations, pretty long lines. It does sound like here downtown, Lucas Oil, Gamebridge Fieldhouse, very reasonable lines there. But certainly in my drive-in, some of the stations, they were very, very long. So keep an eye on that as you plan around that here on this Tuesday morning. In an hour, Stephanie White going to join us, former Miss Basketball, the head coach of the Indiana Fever, coming up at 9:30.
All right, you have a ridiculous question. Let's go. Me and Mark have been sitting over here wondering what this could be. Let's go. Put us on the spotlight. What you got?
Better chance. People like to debate counting votes in this country.
Yeah, you think so?
Have you ever heard about this?
I have heard about this. It's going to be nauseating.
If it's breaking news, Mark, feel free to play the sounder. But, the debating of counting votes, the accuracy of counting votes.
The hanging chads. Do people remember that back in the day?
Look at that. U.S. history right there.
That's an old term.
From Andy Sweeney. Better chance someone writes in a vote for you as president of the United States today, or Anthony Richardson's traded by 4 o'clock.
It's such a great question. I would say that there's a better chance somebody writes my name in for president of the United States and Anthony Richardson gets traded.
No chance on the Richardson trade.
I
mean, everywhere
stunned.
people are saying Bryce Young's being traded.
I know.
Everywhere.
I know. Listen.
People are telling me Bryce Young for Anthony Richardson.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's what we need. I guess I would just be, KB, I would be so stunned that I would have to.
So you think it's a ridiculous question?
Yeah, I still think it's a ridiculous question. Now, people would point to Ballard and Steichen saying, well, we haven't given up now on Anthony Richardson. I want to be clear. I'm trying to act like that doesn't matter to me because Shane Steichen's words right now mean very little, right? I mean, that's, I guess, maybe something. You might feel like that's a strong take that I'm having, but I mean, at this point, come on. I mean, they've told us one thing and then they've done another. So I'm kind of off on the words of Shane Steichen. I don't know. I just cannot believe. I mean, if they traded Anthony Richardson, which I just cannot believe they would do that. It would be such a giving up. It would be such an admittance that they were wrong. And then on top of it, it would be such an admittance that something went on here that just besides the 44% completion percentage. Now, there could be a fan that sat out there, okay, and I didn't know if this is where you're going to take it. And it's like, if you guys don't believe in Anthony Richardson, okay, and if you're not going to play him the rest of the year for the most part and then try to trot him back out there in 2025 and act like we're all going to be excited about it like we have been the last 2 off seasons, then a way that you can make a clean break, a pure break, if you will, and then we'll know you're going to be in that quarterback market going forward would be to move on from him. But boy, what that would admit specifically for Shane Steichen having a lot of say, it would make me think Shane Steichen doesn't know what he's talking about.
Just so we're clear, on the birth certificate, it is Andrew Sweeney?
It is.
Okay, so if we're going to get that right in, I just want to make sure that we get Andrew Sweeney.
What do you think?
On the ballot. I tend to think trades like this that involve some complicated scenarios are not in season. They're a little bit more postseason. My answer is no. I think that they still believe they will give the keys back to Anthony Richardson. But having said that, I mean, they did send a message to 31 teams around the league we're having reservations.
His value is less today than it was 2 weeks ago.
There is
probably
no doubt in my mind teams have called the Colts. No doubt in my mind.
Sure.
And so, that's why I do, bring it up. Again, I don't think they will do something, but we've heard the Bryce Young thing a whole lot here, and I don't know, maybe it's different because Dave Canales is a new coaching staff, and they had no ties prior to Bryce Young, where Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard, they made that draft pick of Anthony Richardson, but it is just it.
What if the New York Giants offered you a second-round pick? I'm using them as an example. They're a team that's going to need a quarterback. They're a team that's probably going to win enough games to where they're not going to get, Shedeur Sanders. They're not going to get the top 3 guys. That's what they've done the last decade, is not being bad enough to go get, one of the high first, second, third quarterbacks on there. I mean, I don't know. You tell me.
I would think long and hard about that. I would. Now, I sit here with the 2025 draft, and I don't think there's crystal clear plans. I said to you yesterday, what's the light at the end of the rainbow? When you went through the horrific 2022 season, the 4th overall pick was that. If you win, 8 games this season, the light at the end of the rainbow of the 16th overall pick is not very rewarding, in my opinion, there. But, I guess that's the question, Andy, of, again, I don't think they believe that it's over, but if they do, then you pick up all these calls and you listen and
right.
You be coy about, what you're saying publicly about him, those sorts of things. I just feel like, and this is why I've been such an advocate to playing him, because I think if you played him over the final 2 months, you might get closer to that answer. I don't think they feel like they are at the finish line. They feel like they're at a 50-meter, 100-meter dash race right now, and I think if you played him the next 2 months, you might get to meter 80 or meter 90. And then all of a sudden, if you get to the offseason and some opportunity presents itself, I don't know what that looks like quarterback related, whether it be draft, whether it be trade, whether it be free agency, all of those are different degrees of it. Maybe all of a sudden you feel more inclined to do that. Whereas right now, I just think it's a shrug of the shoulders and saying, yeah, I guess Anthony will be our quarterback in 2025. And we'll enter the most awkward offseason our franchise has had at quarterback in quite some time.
And you're entering an offseason. The last two, you have had steam. 2 years ago, you had Anthony Richardson. You drafted him, so you had the excitement around, okay, we finally don't have an old quarterback. We have a future, and we can't wait to get out there, to the practice facility and watch it. And there was a lot of, people that were fired up. And this past offseason, you just missed the playoffs. Of course, you think, well, we're going to upgrade at several positions. Some guys, coach is going to be more comfortable. We're going to have an offseason with our quarterback and everything else. And that didn't happen. I think what is interesting to this conversation is not only Indianapolis, but we have 9 teams in the NFL with 2 wins. KB, 9 teams right now in the NFL have 2 wins. 2 other teams have 3 wins. You have 11 teams right now that are just flat out of it. And they just are. I don't know what to say it. And a lot of these teams, are going to be looking for quarterbacks. Actually, I think it's 3 teams that have 3 wins. The Jets, they're one of those teams. They're going to need a quarterback. The Tennessee Titans are one of those teams. The Vegas Raiders, the New York Giants are one of those teams. The New Orleans Saints, the Carolina Panthers. So I'm giving you 7 teams that are going to need to do something at quarterback, and the only free agent maybe worth a damn out there is going to be Sam Darnold. That's it. And the quarterback crop this year, I think, is okay, but it's not spectacular. At least we don't think it's spectacular. I don't know. Does Quinn Ewers get a fan base fired up if they get him at 9th overall? You tell me. Does Quinn Ewers get you fired up? I don't know.
So far, we've had 2 trades here on this Tuesday morning.
All right,
NFL.
what's the second one?
We will hit on those on the other side. I will slide this in here from Rex because it's relevant to the conversation. Wouldn't Ballard be basically putting in his resignation papers if he was to trade Richardson at this point? I would say in normal business, the answer to that would be yes, he would, but I don't know. Michael Jordan's missed shots. Michael Jordan's dribbled the ball off his leg.
We have another trade in the NFL, and then on the other end, I actually have a Ballard question for you, KB. So, what I've been sitting on over here. So, I have a Chris Ballard question, another trade in the NFL. We'll keep it going. Reminder, coming up in 20 minutes, top of the hour, Rick Carlisle will join us. Cannot wait for that. Stephanie White will join us coming up at 9:30. Appreciate you waking up with us. It's a Wednesday on The Fan.
Well, certainly a great day in our country. Maction is back. We've got MAC football tonight.
Oh, do we?
We've got Ball State and Miami of Ohio.
We have Tuesday night football tonight.
Let's go.
What's the number? What's the line? Do we have a line?
Maction, baby.
Does Jason Hammer have a bet for us?
Mike New and Chuck Martin
Rob.
facing off Tuesday night football.
We do.
Outstanding.
We have a doubleheader tonight. That's great. I love that. Bowling Green, Central Michigan, Miami of Ohio, and Ball State. ESPN's got it on lockdown tonight. That's great.
Find other countries that have Maction. This is why our country is indeed the greatest.
Yes, that's the reason why. Is we have Central Michigan and Ball State play football tonight. None of these teams have a winning record tonight.
Well,
in the MAC, that's surprising, is it not? Well, who leads the MAC? I need to look that up.
Hopefully it's Northern Illinois for Notre Dame's sake, but I don't think it is.
We also have tonight college football playoff, the rankings show, the first ones. Just quickly on that, because Indiana will be in. Indiana will be in the playoff. It will be interesting. Two things, KB, to watch, and we can dissect it tomorrow. Obviously, where they're ranked will be interesting, and I can already hear it because I've seen it online that, yes, if they were wearing Michigan uniforms and helmets, would they be ranked 3 or 4 instead of maybe, back at like number 8? That is, probably fair. So we can dive into that. And then what I also find interesting about these things, and you may fall into this, KB, with Texas A&M, if they lose a couple games here down the stretch. By the way, they just lost another running back for the season. That's like their 4th running back they've lost. Anyway, is what teams they put at the back end of the top 25. Does that make sense? In other words, if you want a team to be in the college football playoff, it's important for some of these teams to be ranked at the back end instead of being unranked at the back end of the top 25.
Like Notre Dame has 3 ranked wins, A&M, Louisville, and Navy. But is Navy just lost? Are they going to stay there?
Exactly.
Is Army going to be there?
Exactly.
Those sorts of things are all, is Indiana going to have a ranked win at the end of the year?
So, again, all these are great questions, and the back end of the rankings can sometimes affect the front end. Now, it's a little bit different this year because we have more than 4 teams, obviously, but still, those last few teams at large, that's going to be the debate, much like it was the debate with the 4. You got something?
NFL trade deadline today at 4 o'clock. Just to update you so far here on this Tuesday morning, we've had 2 trades. One, I would say, seller to a buyer. The other one, a little bit more kind of Colts-like from a couple years ago. The seller to the buyer would be Zadarius Smith, a name that a lot of people mentioned, going to the Lions. When Aiden Hutchinson went down, it was, okay, where would they find some insurance? Well, Smith, a veteran pass rusher whose name has been, I feel like, in the trade market almost annually, fits that bill. So he goes there, exchange of some day 3 picks on that end. And then Mark's Bears, they send Khalil Herbert, running back, to Cincinnati. Zach Moss banged up in Cincinnati right now.
He's got a bad injury there.
A 7th rounder back to Chicago. So that one kind of falls a little bit more into the, again, Chicago's not in a sell mode, and I don't know if Cincinnati's in an uber buy mode, but
that's more of a need. Of, hey, we need a running back. All we have is Chase Brown.
Khalil Herbert was one of those guys that I kind of thought the Colts could go after as a possible backup to Jonathan Taylor. He's a very serviceable back. They just weren't using him in Chicago because they have Roschon Johnson and they have DeAndre Swift. So he's kind of lost in the backfield.
More of a pass catcher, right? Yeah, so that's kind of an area that I think the Colts could or should look into. So, again, we'll keep you updated if anything else happens here. Rick Carlisle in 10 minutes.
Yeah, cannot wait to talk with Coach coming up here at 9 o'clock. Just stemming from our conversation we had around the trade deadline and, Anthony Richardson and are there teams calling and what would it take, if you believe that you're off AR and you want to move on and start anew there. To me, if I'm Jim Irsay, that's a conversation I want after the season because I want to know who my head coach is and who my general manager is before I make yet another seismic shift to my franchise. A question for you, and the answer is probably quarterback. What is more frustrating for the Colt fan this season? And KB, I'm wondering, again, the answer is probably quarterback, but it looks like right now that they did not do they didn't do a great job, and they probably didn't do a good job in evaluating Anthony Richardson and the plan around Anthony Richardson, starting him early on. Obviously his play has been poor, and now the benching. And so the quarterback is always on one side, and I almost feel like the rest of the team is on another. What is more frustrating, the fact that they potentially got the quarterback wrong here and that it's a mess right now at the quarterback position yet again, or the fact that Chris Ballard believes that this team, the way it's constituted, is a playoff team. Does that make sense? Like, he believes this is a playoff roster. I don't think it's a bad roster, but I do not believe that it's a playoff roster. I just don't. I think it's a very good roster at times, but it's not a playoff roster. Which is more frustrating to you? The fact that they're talking, they talked about how this is a playoff roster, it's a win now roster, or the fact that the quarterback position has been goofed potentially yet again?
Certainly quarterback. Yeah, it means everything. I mean, what was Chris Ballard's answer at the Combine when I asked him why his resume looks like it looks like? Why
because of the
are
quarterback.
there no division titles? Why is there one playoff win? And he, I thought, answered it rather candidly in saying it's because we haven't gotten quarterback right. Well, 7 months later, the plan that he would have said was the quarterback plan has been, I would argue, severely halted, stunted, not going well, check all the boxes above. Probably all of that is true. So, yeah, that's what you would point to. Sure, you can get into is this a playoff roster debate? That's probably a little bit more of an even debate you go back and forth on. But
oh, sure.
The fact that, again, what's the plan at quarterback? Like, that question. It was a question in 2019 after Luck abruptly retired. It was a question in 2020, 2021, 2022. In 2023, you thought you had answered that. Now, answered it with patience, but you thought you had answered it. You'd certainly swung for the fences with Richardson. Obviously, the early parts of 2024, you felt like that was there. And now here you are going to 180 on your original plan. I do want to go back to a Shane Steichen comment from yesterday. I know we played the audio earlier because I thought it got lost a little bit in the shuffle of this conversation of why Anthony Richardson was benched. And is it due to more off-the-field stuff? I asked Shane on Friday, is there any truth to he's not in the building enough? He's showing up late to meetings, anything on that end.
Mm-hmm.
And Shane uttered the phrase, I have not heard that. When
it's a weird answer.
Joel Erickson followed up yesterday with, I would say, a similar line of questioning. I believe he referenced some national reports in regards to game prep for Richardson leading to his benching. Shane simply said, I addressed that last week. That's not true. I forget the exact
Wait, here,
phrase.
do you want to play it real quick?
Yeah,
Mark,
sure.
play it. It's clip 6 here. Yeah, it was Joel A. Erickson. He asked about it. The national reports of Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I addressed that last week. I don't know where there's reports out there all the time. So, yeah, I addressed that last week. There's no issues there.
Did he address it last week? I mean, I guess technically he did.
That was the answer last week. It just, if that is indeed a factor in the benching, I don't think it would be the end of the world to utter some sort of phrase of, it is a high standard to play quarterback in the NFL. We need him to make sure that he takes steps to meet that standard. Or something along those lines. Maybe what I said was too harsh.
Well, I think they probably feel it is. I bet Steichen does.
Is it just more coddling of him? Like, to me, I think a little bit of tough love wouldn't be the end of the world and wouldn't be something that would all of a sudden go awry. And I don't think Anthony Richardson all of a sudden would go home and weep or do whatever. I don't know. There's part of me that's selfish, Andy, when would like for more transparency from Shane Steichen, so I'll admit that. But I also don't think you're throwing the kid under the bus, you're ripping him publicly, anything on those lines, if you say something to the effect of, again, playing that position, being a captain. Shane has a quote in the building of like, you earn captaincy every day. I'm paraphrasing a little bit there, but they have it plastered up on one of the walls. Like that sort of sentiment, I don't think would be the worst thing in the world. And maybe that would be the wake-up call that Anthony Richardson needs. Rick Carlisle is going to join us in 5 minutes. He talks about Benedict Mathurin differently than certainly Shane Steichen talks about Anthony Richardson.
No doubt. Yeah, definitely publicly. we know that, definitely.
I don't think I'm being biased in saying I'd like for more transparency. I think it would serve, if indeed this is true, I think it would serve him better than I have not heard that as the answer to that question.
His answer, it's almost like his answers on that, going back to Friday, was almost like he did not expect for that to be a question to be asked. And if there is a little bit of that happening, inside the facility, you have to know as a head coach that's going to get out. Unless you're Bill Belichick, and I mean that, like these sorts of things get out. Do you remember what?
Because those are the whispers behind the scenes.
Well, sure,
I don't just ask that question.
Was it Jonathan Jones at CBS who put that out over the weekend? I mean, he put it out very much that there were preparation issues. One reason why Anthony Richardson being benched. Listen, sorry to Shane Steichen. That is very much a narrative, and do I believe it's the entire reason? No. I believe it's the poor play. I believe that's a reason. I believe tapping out. I believe maturity. I believe they want to win. I think there's 6, 7 things that potentially go into this, but one last thing. You asked this question. Do you remember last week what my takeaway was from the press conference on, what was it, I guess, Wednesday with Shane Steichen? My takeaway was Steichen believed in that press conference he was protecting Anthony Richardson. So you mentioned coddling. I don't know if it's that, but they have made a concerted effort not to throw him under the bus.
But I just don't think it would be throwing him under the bus to state that.
But it would create follow-up questions, whereas the way he's answered it kind of dismiss it, like, why were we even talking about it? Does that make sense?
Would your fan base appreciate it?
They probably would, because they have no idea what the hell's going on at the quarterback position. Yeah. There's no doubt. We're both searching for it. I believe you're right on that. All right, so Pacers got the win last night. Let's talk to him. Pacers head coach Rick Carlisle. He joins us on the other side on this Wednesday or Tuesday.
Staying up was worth it last night. Very impressive by the Indiana Pacers. 134, was it 127? I'm trying to think what the final exactly.
Yes, it was 134-127.
Over the Dallas Mavericks. Thought many times during that game, I thought that looks much more like the Pacers we are used to. and they get a win in Dallas. Now coming back home later today, Orlando tomorrow night inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And as always, because it was especially a late night last night, we appreciate the time of our next guest. He is the Pacers head coach. He is Rick Carlisle. Coach, good morning to you. Thank you for being flexible with us, and congrats on the W.
Hey, yeah, what's up?
What stood out to you the most last night? Obviously, offensively, 134 is a big number, but what did you like most about getting a really nice win over the defending Western Conference champs?
Well, Miles Turner, 11 rebounds is a big number and a very important number, and our team out-rebounding their team is really the number one indicator of success right now for us. So those are two things that were very, very important. I thought we had balance. I thought our guard play was terrific. We kept pace in the game. We didn't get rattled when they made runs. And the execution down the stretch was very, very good. Haliburton and Siakam were tremendous. And, Mathurin hit a huge shot in front of our bench, that dip three over Doncic, which made it it went from, I think, 4-point lead to a 7-point lead. That was a huge shot. He'd had 2 or 3 of those throughout the game. That's something that we've been working on. I think it's one of his gifts, the ability to rise up, and just get a clear look at a three, and he shoots it easy. And we kept talking about in timeouts, just keep stepping into those. The next one's going to go down, and he's a confident kid, and that was a huge shot. And then he had a couple of really important transition plays at the fourth. So, a big win for us. It's a rough start with the schedule, a lot of good teams, but a lot of good things last night.
That's the voice of Rick Carlisle, Pacers head coach, on this Tuesday on the Payless Liquors hotline. Let's stay with Benedict Mathurin. Besides his scoring, he obviously has a chance to be in the starting lineup, unfortunately, with Nesmith out. The last 3 games, Coach, you mentioned rebounding. Mathurin averaging 8 rebounds per game in the last 3 games. What things is he doing that you like thus far this season? How is he growing his game?
Well, the rebounding is obviously an enormous thing, and possession of the ball for us off defensive rebounds triggers transition. It's one of the reasons we haven't been able to play as fast as we did during much of the year last year. And when our guards and wing players get the rebounds, a lot of times they're already on their way into transition. And so when we get our wing players getting 5, 6, 7, 8 boards, and we had 11 in the Boston game. It's a big deal for us. And then Ben's defense has come a long way. It was something headed into this year that he really needed to improve and really needed to work on. He spent a lot of extra time with Jenny Busick on this and Jim Boylan, who are the 2 people that really run our defense. And he understands that if you're going to be viewed as someone that's a possible starting player on a organization like the Pacers, that responsibility is a high standard. You look at the people that came before you. You look at Reggie Miller, who was in that position for 18 straight years, or maybe 17 and a half. I don't know when he went to starting at the 2 position, but a lot is expected. And there's a lot of accountability. And so that's one of the reasons, he's been held to a high level of accountability in his first 2+ years. And I want to make sure that he earns it. And he's in the process of earning the minutes, whether ultimately he's, a guy that's put in ink as a starter for this team, going forward or not, all that has yet to be determined. But I just love the way he continues to work and continues to work at his craft.
At some point, he'll strike. You uttered that phrase last night. He certainly did with that big shot over Luka there late in that one. Pacers win in Dallas, 134-127. Rick Carlisle gracious with his time here early on a Tuesday morning. Coach, you brought up rebounding. All 7 games, the winner of the rebounding margin this season for you has won that game. And I feel like it was something similar back in the postseason for you as well. Is that like the stat that correlates most to winning right now in the NBA? I don't know. It just seems like that has been such a front burner stat that the winner of that results in the win or loss here lately for your team.
Well, it's big for us. I would have to think it's big for everybody, but I don't have time to go through and study everybody's rebounding stats. But I know that for us it was absolutely impactful, decisive, critical, whatever you want to say, in the playoffs last year. I mean, just about every game that we won the rebounding battle, and vice versa. Every game we lost it almost. If not all of them. And then in the three wins this year, we have a positive margin, and the 4 losses we have a negative margin. So. Look, it's something we worked on a lot at our practice at SMU on Sunday. With mindset and with responsibility, and some of it's even strategy, and working on things like not leaking out in transition. Like when you're a running team, it's very tempting to release on the shooter and go. We had one of those early in the game. It was actually Mathurin. And he knew it, and the ball bounced back into the area he should have been in. And then, he didn't make that mistake again. And we had very few, if any, leakouts last night, and we had a lot of guard rebounds. And so rebounding is, major stat.
Rick Carlisle with us here on this Tuesday on the Payless Liquors hotline. Coach, we've had a conversation since the James Wiseman injury, but not since Isaiah Jackson. Unfortunate for him. Quite frankly, I feel bad. Contract deal was really going to be such a pivotal part of your team. How do you change things up? How do you adjust now that you've lost essentially your 2 backup bigs?
Well, right now it's pretty obvious. Obi goes to some backup 5. We have Enrique Freeman, who's on a 2-way, who, if you guys remember, actually got into the Detroit game on the road, the first game of the season, because Isaiah had not yet been playing because of his groin, and what else was going on? Yeah, and Wiseman had gone down in that game. So look. We'll be playing smaller at times, until we get some help. Hopefully something like that can happen and we can get another big. But right now it's not the easiest time for those kinds of transactions. And again, it comes back to the rebounding. And when you have a team that you want to play with a high level of tempo, those guard rebounds play right into it. And, we had some of our best, running opportunities last night. Obi Toppin he just outruns the world. I mean, he's amazing. Shepard does the same thing. Mathurin had a couple of big transition plays. McConnell keeps pacing the game. We got to keep doing that. But if we don't get the ball, when you take it out of bounds, it turns into a whole different deal.
Again, Rick Carlisle is with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Pacers get a big win last night in Dallas. You referenced Tyrese Haliburton after the game, and I think Haliburton might have been perfect on his 2-point shots last night. It seemed like he just lived in the paint and was very efficient there. You said it's not been easy for him early in the year. Could you expand on that a little bit? Is that more what you're seeing from teams defensively, trying to take him away? And I guess just on that aspect, what are you seeing with teams with Haliburton right now?
Well, I think there's some things that people need to understand about our team and the way it's structured now. A lot of folks look at the beginning of the season last year and the way everything happened, and he had a meteoric first month and a half, 2 months, and 2 things were really different. Our team was structured way different. Actually, 3 things. We were small, and we were actually faster. The game was being officiated, not totally differently, but significantly differently. And so, and then the third thing, or maybe it's four, maybe I'm listing four things now, is that we had not gotten Pascal Siakam yet. And so, Pascal changes our spacing a little bit, and you add a star player who's going to touch the ball more. There's no way Tyrese is going to put up the same kind of stats. Now he's going to have some big games, but I had our analytics people look at what the individual stats were for those two guys for the combined first two playoff series last year. So Milwaukee, 6 games there, and then New York, 7 games. And, the stats broke down like Pascal averaged, 21 and 7.5 rebounds and 3.5 assists. And Tyrese averaged 19 points, 8 assists, and, I think 5 rebounds or something like that. And so realistically, to create the proper balance, or to have the proper balance, or to view the thing, the way it probably should be viewed, the expectation for Tyrese to be scoring 25 and getting 11 or 12 assists every night is, I'm not sure it's realistic at all. And so, everybody's got to tap down on what expectations should be. And look, we're in year 2. We've got continuity, but now injuries have changed the kind of the locus of our team a little bit. So we're still putting it together, but I thought Tyrese played his one of his very best games last night. His second half was brilliant, and the thing that I keep talking about that he's doing better and better is leading the team. Through a stretch where, whatever he started from 3, it was 1 or 2 out of whatever, a bunch. He has kept his emotions. He has continued to lead and lift people around him up, and continue to work. And so, those are great things. And how tough it is right now for our team is something that I hope strengthens us as we move forward.
Rick Carlisle with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Coach, with the Aaron Nesmith injury, the left ankle sprain, it sure looks scary the other night there in New Orleans. Any update on him and how that's progressing?
Well, he's doing a little better each day. It's not a surgery situation, is what my understanding is. He's precautionarily in a boot, and it's just going to depend on how he feels. He could be back in relatively short order, possibly, or this could take a while. No one's really sure. And in his stead, we've got to depend on obviously Mathurin, who is in a starting role in Aaron's place, and then I think it's important to talk about Walker. Walker's doing a really good job. He's not putting up gaudy scoring numbers or anything like that. But last night he guarded Luka Doncic pretty well.
He did,
and he guarded him in the post without fouling, and he Luka kicked the ball out one time, and he's doing a lot of other good things. And look, this is there are different ways to develop players. This is one of the best ways, actually, not to just give them minutes, unconditionally and say, hey, go out and just play. It's better when players can have a high level of responsibility, learn about the urgency of every minute they play, and experience that and feel it. And so. Thing I've really been impressed with Walker is that, his whole mental approach to this season, has changed. he would tell you that he came in last year expecting to be quote given an opportunity, and he came to a team that was becoming more veteran, that had pretty good depth, that traded for Pascal Siakam, and so when we talked to him, exit meetings, encouraged him to change his thinking to earning the opportunity. But here's how it's going to go. I mean, we need hard play, physicality, and rebounding and defense. Those things are the grunt work that when you come in after 1 year of college in a one and done situation and you've played AAU all your life. Nobody's talking to you about those kinds of things. You're hearing about your skill and your vision and how you shoot it and all those kinds of things. And what we've been saying to him is, look, get in the best shape that you've ever been in, be physical, defend, rebound, and then that gets you on the floor, and then your other skills will show out. And so, look, he's shooting the ball well. We all know that he's a very gifted passer. He's driving the ball better, and he's growing, but it's taking some time. But, I think it's happening the right way.
Again, Rick Carlisle joining us here. It's an early morning in Dallas for the Pacers. Big win last night. They will head back to Indy and take on the Magic coming up tomorrow night. Coach Lynn, with this, it happened 6 nights ago, but I wanted to make sure that we mentioned it. You did pass Bill Fitch on the all-time wins list, 11th all-time. And there's probably part of me, we might have even asked you this last year, where you pass some of these names and maybe they don't have the full resonation as Bill Fitch might for you, considering your relationship with him. Could you kind of share with your audience your relationship with him and if passing him maybe means something different than some of the others on the list?
Well, very, very special person in my life for obvious reasons. He was the one that gave me my start in coaching. I was really at the end of my playing career. I think I've told you guys a story maybe once or even twice, but I made the team in New Jersey with the Nets for a month. Our best player, Roy Hinson, had been out with an injury, for the first month. I knew when Roy came back, I was probably going to be gone. At the time, Coach Fitch only had one assistant coach. Butch Beard was his assistant. And so it was a very unusual situation. I mean, you look at staffs in the NBA now. I mean, there's up to 7 or 8 or 9 assistant coaches. And so he called me to let me know that I was getting waived, and I began to thank him for the opportunity. He said, "No, just wait. I'm not done talking." He had kind of he had an interesting sense of humor. He said, "Listen, as you know, I only have one assistant coach," and he goes, "It wouldn't be a lot of money, but I've got a coaching job that I'd like to offer you. It'd be, scouting. You'd be an assistant. You'd be on the road a lot, but you learn the game, and if you worked at it, you might be able to have a good career doing it." And so it didn't take a lot of thought on my part to say yes, and but it was odd going from one of the players in the locker room to like 5 days later I'm one of the coaching staff, so that was something interesting to navigate. But our roster was very much in flux, and there were a lot of changes year to year, and so after 2 or 3 years there were really only 2 or 3 guys left. So it was the opportunity of a lifetime. One of the most heartwarming things that I saw was Coach Fitch finally getting into the Hall of Fame in 2019. He had been one of the great franchise builders, and when you're a franchise builder, you lose a lot of games. You take over a team. Took over Cleveland, when they came in as an expansion team in 1970 or something like that. I mean, you take a lot of hits, and so he didn't have a great won-loss record, but in every situation that he was in, Cleveland, he came to the Celtics, and they went from lottery to championship. He went to the Houston Rockets. They went from lottery to the NBA Finals. went to New Jersey. He took New Jersey from the lottery to the playoffs, and then he ended with the Clippers and took them from the lottery to the playoffs. So very special man. When I tied him, it was it was very emotional. And then passing him, I didn't even think about it. I mean, it's just like you can't you just don't count after a while. But he passed away a few years ago, and I think about him often.
Win number 946 last night in the great career of Rick Carlisle. Coach, we can't thank you enough for making time. I know it was a late one last night. Safe travels back to Indy. Congrats on the win, and we look forward to a full Gainbridge Fieldhouse coming up tomorrow night.
Hey, thanks, guys. Take care.
Rick Carlisle, Payless Liquors hotline. A ton there, per usual, and I think a lot we'll probably get into more coming up tomorrow. Reminder, Stephanie White, new Fever head coach, coming up at 9:30. Anything specifically there, Carlisle?
Well, I think two things. I think three things. He went out of his way to talk about Jarris Walker there and say some good things about him.
Certainly.
And you love the things that he's saying about Benedict Mathurin. To me, the two non-Pacer items that he mentioned with Fitch, remember, college football, they have a Hall of Fame, and Howard Schnellenberger is not in it, and neither is Mike Leach. And that's because they both don't have over a 500 winning percentage. And both of those guys did nothing but exactly what Rick Carlisle said.
Is that
they took over, whether it be Louisville, Miami, Oklahoma, I forget the Florida International that Howard went to, and then obviously Mike Leach, the places where he had to turn around bad teams. You think of Texas Tech, right? You think of Mississippi State, those sorts
Washington
of things.
State,
Excuse me. That's probably a better one. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and this is for tomorrow, but there's a spot in there where he says, it's good where, and I'm paraphrasing, where guys earn the minutes and aren't given the minutes. I think the Colts fell into that a little bit with Anthony Richardson. Because you're drafting him so high, he has to play. He has to have the job. And looking back, maybe we were wrong on that. Maybe they were wrong. Maybe I was wrong
on that. It's an awkward, difficult situation. I don't know if it's exactly apples to apples, but
it's not.
I'm fine having that combo. Certainly a ton to get to. And I thought his comments about Haliburton were accurate of like, okay, we probably should take a step back from those insane numbers he put up last year. You can still have high standards for him, but that means guys like Mathurin and that offensive juice is needed. And then the Aaron Nesmith thing sounds a little bit up in the air and just exactly when his return could be. Not the easiest time for transactions and finding another big.
Yeah.
That could be a good Tony East combo for tomorrow because I think they got to add somebody. It's way too much pressure on Turner right now to handle.
He can't keep doing it. I mean, if he twists an ankle's out 3 games, I mean, your center's Obi Toppin.
Yeah, exactly. So, again, Stephanie White here in a few. Let's do a quick morning check down.
Yeah, obviously, we've done a lot of Pacers. You miss any of Rick Carlisle, check it out. Podcast Center, 1075thefan.com. The Pacers did get the win last night, 134-127 there in Dallas. Let's go to the Colts real quick. Shane Steichen meeting with the media yesterday. We've been giving you his sound this morning. Let's do this one, Mark. He still believes the locker room. They still believe they can get it done this year.
I got a ton of faith in the guys in that locker room. There's never any quit in any of these guys. You can see it. As bad as it was yesterday and the way it went, our guys fought all the way till the end. There's 5 minutes left and it's 10-14 and we're still right in it. So our guys that we got in that locker room, I got a lot of faith and trust in those guys moving forward.
Again, the spread has actually went down for the Bills game on Sunday from 5 to 4. Buffalo still favored. And then the news, if you will, from yesterday, the Jets, week 11 in 2 weeks, the Jets and Colts moved from Sunday Night Football to a 1 o'clock game earlier in the day. Not a surprise there.
Not at all. All right, college basketball on that front last night. Purdue 90-73 over Texas A&M Corpus Christi. 16-point halftime lead, but there were certainly some shaky moments there in fully finishing that off. They did go on an 11-0 run to finish it, but Texas A&M Corpus Christi got within a couple possessions there with about a handful of minutes to go. Fletcher Lawyer, 21. Trey Kaufman-Renn, 15. Daniel Jacobson, the freshman, got the start. 13-7 for him. Braden Smith, a little bit of everything. Miles Colvin was big in the first half. It was kind of struggling there in the first half, and Colvin hit several threes there. So certainly, questions to be asked about Purdue here as they transition into life without Zach Edey. And for Butler last night, Thad Matta, not happy. 19 turnovers, 12 assists. They were fortunate to escape Missouri State, a team picked to finish very deep in the Missouri Valley Conference there. Jameel Telfort was really, really big, but Butler surviving there in their opener.
Yeah, Monday Night Football, Chiefs winners. Not a surprise they win every game. So they won in overtime, whatever. 26-20, that's your fine. I got nothing. I'm done. Yes, they won. The Chiefs won. Wake me up when they lose.
Overtime, inevitable. Why didn't Todd Bowles go for 2? All those questions are fair. Maction tonight, college football rankings tonight, unless you got anything. That's all on mine.
I think that's it. New Fever head coach Stephanie White, she joins us on the other side. Appreciate you hanging out with us on this Wednesday. Why am I doing this, Mark? On this Tuesday.
Well, from Rick Carlisle to now the new head coach of the Indiana Fever, although you say the word new, and I think to people in this state that certainly is not true. She is the pride of Seeger High School, the Patriots, leading Purdue, of course, to a national title, and has certainly made a stop with the Indiana Fever as a player, as a coach before, and she is back here. And yesterday, I think a lot of happy people watching that introductory press conference. Stephanie White back as the Fever head coach. Coach, good morning to you. Welcome back home.
Good morning. Thank you.
How much did this state and this organization play in your decision to leave Connecticut and come back to the Fever?
It played a huge role. This is, and I know I've said it, and I know it sounds cliche, but this is a franchise that's a part of my DNA. Growing up in the state of Indiana, being able to play for this franchise and coach in this franchise, and continue to watch it grow. It's just an incredible opportunity for me to come home, and you couple that with an outstanding roster, young talent, exciting team. I mean, it's the perfect scenario, and it was an easy decision.
Coach, I'm sure you've been asked this and answered it a couple of times already in your short stint back here in Indy, but how's it going to be being on the other side, going on the road and having all the Fever fans instead of being up against it?
It's going to be exciting, right? That's what everybody wants. You want them all cheering for you, although sometimes it's just fun to be in that type of environment. But it's exciting. I think that one thing that people keep asking about all the excitement and all the fandom, but this is what we've wanted, right? Like, this is what we've envisioned when the WNBA started. We knew we were on a trajectory, and it's this perfect moment in time where young star power has been brought into the WNBA, and it's just moved the needle in a way that it hasn't been moved before. And so I'm just excited to still be around coaching while this is happening so that I can embrace this moment.
She is Stephanie White, again, back here as the Fever head coach. That announcement official at the introductory press conference yesterday. Coach, how much did the presence of Kelly Krauskopf back with the Fever play into your decision?
It was huge. Kelly has been and was the original architect of the Indiana Fever franchise and our first championship. And this league and this team and this franchise is a part of her DNA as well. And when I heard that Kelly was coming back, then you knew that this was an organization that was going to continue to take the next steps and going to continue to fight for more championships and put those pieces together. And so that played a huge role. My comfort level with Kelly, understanding of how she works and how she operates, knowing how much she loves this league and loves this franchise, that was a big part of the decision.
The next level, you mentioned that, the next level for this team and franchise is what, in your opinion?
It's competing for championships. We think about the expectation was always to be competing for championships, and I think now we have an opportunity again to be doing that. Certainly, it's going to take some time. I mean, these are young players. There's no substitute for experience. If we can get a couple more veteran players around them, build depth in our bench, and those who have been around sports for a long time knows that it's a difficult thing to do, right? Certainly, all the stars have to align, but this roster. These players, generational talent like Caitlin Clark and certainly Aaliyah Boston, when she's finished with her career, is going to go down in history as probably the best center that we've seen in our league. And you think about building around those two, championships is the expectation, to compete for championships year in and year out.
New Fever head coach, she's back. Stephanie White with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Your team's there in Connecticut, great on defense. So let's talk about defense for a second. What does this, and again, I know you all will add players. The roster construct is by no means finished, but being better on defense, how does that start? How do you teach that to this team?
Well, I think first and foremost, we lay the level of expectation. Like, you're going to be expected to defend if you want to be on the floor. And it's not about being an elite one-on-one defender. It's about being a great team defensive team. And for us, that's going to start with ball pressure. It's going to start with execution of coverages, multiple coverages, not just one or two. We've got to be able to keep teams off balance, multiple levels of effort on that end of the floor, a commitment to just being solid, to forcing teams to take the shots that we want them to take, for forcing players to take the shots that we want them to take, and playing it from a basketball IQ standpoint. Now, I think this is a really smart basketball team. They have a high IQ. They understand the game. And this is, I think, something that they're going to embrace.
In this state, when you're Miss Basketball and you lead a Purdue to a national title, that holds a lot of high regard. Stephanie White has that on her resume. She's back here as the head coach of the Indiana Fever. Coach, obviously the presence of Caitlin Clark, I don't know if you can even compare really it to anything else. From afar, what has struck you about either her play on the floor and or her ability to handle all of the T-Swift-like mania?
Yeah, I think that she's been so gracious and poised in how she's handled it all. You know, they're mature beyond her years. You know, at the end of the day, you know, she's a basketball player who wants to be the best basketball player that she can possibly be. You know, she's a competitor who wants to win. She's hungry to grow and to get better and to be coached and to help this franchise win. You know, and I think all the noise around her, all of the hype around her, you can't prepare yourself for that. But she and her family have done a great job of navigating. And, you know, I hope that for me, I could just be another resource for her, you know, another person who can help her, you know, navigate the things that she's going through, because it can't be easy. I can't imagine it's easy. And at the same time, you know, her ability to keep the main thing, which is, you know, her job and basketball and to being the best that she can be. I think she's done an outstanding job.
Coach, I think to the casual sports fan, when they look at your resume and they recall, oh, yeah, she was here with the Fever and then left to go take a college job, that's not something we typically see even in the NBA or even the WNBA. So for those that, you know, maybe weren't as following it as closely as they are now, could you take us back to why you did leave the Fever for that Vanderbilt job back, I guess it's almost a decade ago now?
I mean, there were a lot of factors that came into play, certainly much like this. And, you know, it was a different time in the WNBA. We didn't have long-term contracts. We certainly weren't making very much money. And for me, I had 3 young kids, 4 and under, and having the security of a long-term contract. You know, at that time, too, I also missed the energy of being on a college campus, the community that you had on a college campus. Remember at those times, too, and they probably don't if they weren't watching at that time, but most of the players went overseas in the off season, so there was no one here in the off season, and so it got a little lonely sometimes when you are connected to a team and connected to a franchise, and then everybody's gone. So being a part of a college, you know, environment and a college community was something that I was drawn to at that time as well. You know, and of course, hindsight's 20/20, right? Like you always look back on different decisions that we made. When I make the same one, I don't know. But I grew a lot. I learned a lot. You know, my kids are growing up now, and so they're at a different point in their life as well. And for us, the opportunity to return home and to come home was just too good an opportunity to pass up.
Well, we'll end with this, and we thank you for the time because I know it's a busy whirlwind here as you take this job. The biggest thing Stephanie White off the floor is looking forward to and being back in Indiana is what?
Family, certainly. You know, I missed a lot of time away from my family, and you know, not just my direct family with my mom, my sisters, my aunts, my cousins, but the basketball family that we create here in Indiana. You know, it's unique. We're connected to these fans in this city, in this WNBA, Indiana Fever, Indiana Pacers basketball family. And every time I come back into this arena and every time I come back into this city, it's like coming home. And you see all those familiar faces, and they are like family to me. And so I'm super excited to be able to come back and to work with some of the greatest in this industry and to see these people and to be able to share our experiences and our lives again.
Well, Stephanie, congrats. I'm sure it's been, you know, quite the emotional ride here over the last couple of weeks. This state, I know, means a lot to you, and certainly Fever fans seem to be in unison about their excitement with you coming back to lead the organization. So congrats on that, and we'll be looking forward to hopefully more conversations coming up when the season gets here.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Stephanie White right there, Payless Liquors Hotline.
Yeah, the two things I think I got from that roster construct, I mean, this is a team, when you talk about front office and now head coach, has made decisions, and especially at head coach, made a difficult decision, if you will. You bring in Stephanie again, you know, you make that difficult decision to get rid of Chrissy Sides that you know, you are telling your fan base we're all in. Now they have to do that, and they get the chance and opportunity to do that with the roster construct. I think that's number one. And then the reason I ask about it, you know, those Connecticut teams frustrated Caitlin Clark, and those Connecticut teams near the top in many defensive categories in the WNBA. And, you know,
a lot of important personnel on that end of the floor.
Sure. And so how they build with personnel around that, you know, for the defense and not just on the offensive side, and then how she's going to coach that and make that better, I think will be probably the number one thing I'll watch for this team in this coming season will be how much better they can be defensively.
I was interested in Kelly Kroskoff's comments yesterday, why no more Christy Sides. And she referenced the Christy Sides tweet, frankly, of Christy Sides saying that she left it better than she found it. And it sounded like Kelly Kroskoff is taking this job saying, this is a golden opportunity to win a title. I'm putting words in her mouth, but now.
No, I think it's now. Yeah,
it is.
100%.
I'm not wasting
100%.
1 year of this. I'm maximizing the opportunity. It felt a little bit like, I always thought it was weird where the Colts kept Chuck Pagano 1 year into the Chris Ballard era. It's like, you know Ballard doesn't want him.
Right.
Just start over.
Right,
and I think that's how Kelly kind of viewed it. It's like, I don't think I want Christy Sides permanently. And if we can go out and swing big and Caitlin Clark can be the dangling carrot, we're going to attract. And it sounded like, based off her comments, they had a lot of candidates. I think Stephanie White was probably atop of the list. But maximize this opportunity, expedite this opportunity. I think that played a big reason. I think you can feel Stephanie White's energy and certainly her knowledge level as well. And strong words for Leah Boston.
Yeah, that's the other thing. The greatest, what did you say? The greatest center
in
the history of the WNBA. I mean, that's
high,
that is lofty.
High praise right there.
Yeah, it really is. So we meant to clip that out. There's a promo. How about that? So good stuff there. You miss any of that conversation? Obviously, the one with Rick Carlisle. Check him out. 1075thefan.com. All right, let's do a pop quiz on this Tuesday. 317-239-1070. Load them up. Let's do it. Pop quiz on a Tuesday. Let's do it next. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
All right, it is NFL trade deadline day. We've had a couple deals early this morning. I don't think anything too earth-shattering. We'll continue to keep an eye on that. 4 o'clock for that. Just a reminder, Purdue and Butler both get it done last night. Not the prettiest looking things for either, but they get it done. Indiana tomorrow, SIU Edwardsville. That is 8 o'clock to open things up there in year 3 of the Mike Woodson era.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Are there any good games tonight? I'm looking right now. I wasn't
sure
I'm trying
if
to
we
scan here.
Do they take tonight off for election, or is that just the NBA?
No, that's just the NBA.
Okay.
College basketball's on, man. What are you talking about?
A lot of games.
There's not many games. No. There's like 10 games. There's no good ones.
So it's a much quieter night.
It's no NBA. Bad night for college basketball. Given that it gets dark at 5 o'clock, I'll be asleep at 8:30. I guess. I don't know. You tell me.
My Irish have Stonehill tomorrow night.
There you go. It's a big one. Stonehill. They return everybody. That's always my fake analysis. And in today's day and age, no one returns anybody in college basketball. It's quite literally the opposite.
I think it was Kevin Kugler and Robbie Hummel last night. They're like, Texas A&M Corpus Christi shockingly returns all 4 of their 5 starters. I'm like,
that's crazy.
What mid-major program does that nowadays?
Yeah, nobody.
All right, let's do a pop quiz. Jiffy Lube oil change. If we get a 5-for-5 effort here, as I scroll through it, it's short, and I've heard of all the answers.
Okay, so you're saying it's doable.
Yeah.
Basically.
I would say NBA-centric.
Okay.
With IU football flavor.
Oh, I like that. Well, let's do it. You want to pick the call, or do you want me to?
Let's go number 2. Bill. Hey, Bill.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Bill, we are great. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well.
Bill, have you been out on this Tuesday morning? Have you voted?
No, I'm going to wait till about 1 o'clock.
Sounds like a smart idea. Certainly very crowded this morning on the commute in. Bill, I think this is a very, very manageable pop quiz here. Although number 5 is just stupid now that I look at it.
Yeah, well, you know how it is.
Yeah.
At least it starts in the 70s and not in 1932.
Yeah,
so,
and Bill's always struck me as a smart individual, so I feel good about this.
All right, Bill, let's get a win. Let's do it. Question number 1. The Pacers won late last night in Dallas. Who was the game's leading scorer? Was it Miles Turner, Luka Doncic, Tyrese Haliburton, or Kyrie Irving?
Luka Doncic.
Bill, I think he's the biggest complainer in the NBA. Do you agree with me?
He's got to be. He's right up there.
It's Luka. Don't overthink it.
Yeah,
I don't know if you. I just was hoping that you would agree with me.
I think you confused him. You were trying to make small talk, and he thought you were giving him a hint.
Story of my dating
so he got
life
thinking.
right there.
Wait a minute, Haliburton or Turner? Is that what KB means? Does he think that Tyrese Haliburton is one of the great complainers in the NBA?
Haliburton complains. Just confusing the hell out of Bill here. Okay, Bill, number 2. Name one of the 2 NBA teams that is still undefeated. We've got 2, one in each conference. Can you give us one of them?
I can't remember. The New York Knicks, maybe?
I would guess again.
I
would say
Philadelphia 76ers.
I'd say a team within driving distance, a team in the Pacers division.
Oh. Cleveland?
I can't believe he got that. Question number 3. There are no winless teams, Bill. No winless teams in the NBA right now. 3 teams will enter play tomorrow with only 1 win this season. Which of the following teams has more than 1 win? The Raptors, Jazz, Sixers, Bucks.
The Jazz.
Boy, that was with confidence and conviction.
I know.
Oh my God, that's a Benedict Mathurin jumper late. IU football team, Bill, ranked 8th in this week's AP College Football Poll. What is the highest the Hoosiers have ever been ranked in the AP poll? Is it 8th, 6th, 5th, or 4th?
I'm an IU fan, so I would say 8.
All right, question number 5, Bill. On this day in 1971, the Los Angeles Lakers halted a 2-game skid with a 110-106 win over the Baltimore Bullets at the Forum. They would not lose another game for more than 2 months. Unbelievable. Which team halted the Lakers' NBA record 33-game winning streak all the way back on January 9th, 1972? Was it the Suns, the Cincinnati Royals, the Bucks, or the Hawks?
Boy, it's been a while. I say the Hawks.
Luca was right. Cavs are undefeated. Thunder are undefeated.
So we got those,
and
that's where it ended.
3, 4, 5. He was so confident with the Jazz. I almost double. I was like, Scotty must be wrong.
Yeah, I kind of believed Bill and not Scotty. No, the Toronto Raptors.
2 wins for the Raptors.
Yes, the Raptors 2-6. You know what's crazy about the Bucks being 1-6? That Giannis is doing this thing where he's like, if we keep losing, they might trade me. That's his way of saying I wouldn't mind being traded without being an AH like James Harden has been about it. That's his way of being nice with a smile. Yeah, if you traded me, AH. Wouldn't be the worst thing. Wouldn't be the worst
for
thing.
IU football, 1945, 1967, they climbed that high, and the Bucks for the final question there. I actually think where IU is ranked tonight matters. Like,
I would agree it does.
A lot of people don't
does.
put too much stock into the first college football rankings, but hear me out on this.
No, go ahead. I'm probably going to agree with you.
IU's got 3 games left. Michigan.
Right.
Bye week.
Right.
At Ohio State and Purdue. Let's play out those games. Win, loss, win.
Yeah, that's fair.
You're not helping your resume at all with beating Michigan and beating Purdue. That's just the sad reality of where those 2 programs are at. Certainly Michigan, middle of the pack, 500 football team, and Purdue stinks. So you're not really going to help out your resume at all. I guess a close game in Columbus might help it a little bit or maybe not hurt it too much. But I bring that up to say, like, I think it's important to build a little cushion with the rankings of, if you can be ranked, top 8 tonight, then that might soften the blow of, the inevitable just pimple picking people are going to do at IU's schedule here throughout the month of November and into December. I don't see a lot of movement for Indiana. Now, obviously, a loss to Michigan or a win to Ohio State, that would totally shift.
Sure, things would change.
But I just think there's less volatility with IU's final 3 games than there is for a lot of other teams with their final month schedule. So that's why I say their positioning here right now, I think is going to matter because I don't see a lot of shifting one way or the other, really.
Yeah.
I mean, a big loss to Ohio State, maybe they...
Well, the thing would be if they have a close win, like let's say, I think they're going to absolutely blow Purdue out of the water. But let's say that game's 35-30. If you're here's what I think is working in Indiana's favor. I don't think a lot of these other teams that are going to be on the fringe. I don't think now. Again, this is a committee thing. This is not the rest of us. But I don't think there are people that are wowed by these other teams. There haven't been, like Alabama this year. Alabama is a 6-2 football team that has almost lost to they've lost to Vanderbilt. And I know Vanderbilt's different, but
everybody's a notch below.
Yeah.
Ohio State's a notch below. Georgia's a notch below. Alabama's a notch below.
LSU. I'm not picking on Brian Kelly. I actually kind of like Brian Kelly, but a lot of these teams, we have watched them lose games and not be a dominant team. And right now, Indiana has the, hey, we're a fun, unexpected, undefeated team. To me, watch where Indiana is ranked. You're right. Are they degraded at all? Watch that. And then it's also watch some of these teams on who is at the back end of the top 25. So other teams can look and say, hey, we beat a top 25 team. I think that's interesting as well. Notre Dame, they need that. They need A&M to be in there. They need Louisville to be like number 24 in the country. That makes your resume look a lot better.
We've seen a few trades here early on in the NFL today. Nothing earth-shattering. 4 o'clock, the deadline on that. And everybody safe travels as they head out to vote.
Yeah, have a good Tuesday. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Miss any of the show, check it out. Podcast Center, 1075thefan.com.